on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Happy Hump Day to you, my little buddy.
Crudy, happy hump day. I gotta tell you, I'm a little aggrieved today. You know, in our beautiful Milwaukee studios, our Spectrum internet is down. Facebook for our region is down, and my understanding as well, Instagram also down. How are we supposed to relay the most important information to our social media fans if we don't have access?
Well, Dominic, maybe on the radio?
What a great idea. We're a radio product.
Dominic, what do you think? I'll let you do the lead today, my little buddy. What is the lead today?
Crudy, the Washington Post, well, they summarize it very well for us. Paul Manafort is sentenced to a total of 7.5 years in prison for conspiracy and fraud and charged with mortgage fraud in New York. And oh yeah, no collusion if you believe Donald Trump.
So let me see if I get this straight. Manafort in what? Berman Jackson's courtroom today. A little sentencing. Perhaps it's not going to go quite as easy as it did last week. And Dominic, I don't know if you noted, but Manafort didn't roll up in a wheelchair this week. And he wore a suit. Quite different than the green prison garb he showed up for at his last sentencing, apparently seeking a differing outcome. And a little bit differing outcome, the 7.5 years in total. I don't care about the minutia. What I do care about is 16 new felony charges dropped in New York on Manafort. And we would remind the people, Dom, state charges can't be pardoned away quite so readily.
Minor details, yeah. Right on the heels of the conviction, there's some concurrent time with these two different cases. He's going to do a total of 7.5 years, maybe get some time off for good behavior. And as soon as they get done with that and to wrap it up, boom, the state of New York drops 16 indictments on Manafort. I mean, what a talk about kicking him when he's down.
And Dominic, that happened literally minutes after Manafort was sentenced in Berman Jackson's courthouse. Why don't you lead us today, buddy? It's your headline. You do the lead.
Once a globe-trotting lobbyist and consultant to presidents, Paul Manafort was sentenced Wednesday to federal prison for the second time in 7 days, giving him a total sentence of 7.5 years for his two federal cases. And let's remind everybody, that's President Donald Trump's campaign manager. And soon after he left the court hearing in Washington in a wheelchair to return to the cell in Alexandria, Virginia, where he has been held for 9 months, prosecutors in New York announced a 16-count grand jury indictment charging the former Trump campaign chairman with mortgage fraud, falsifying business records, and conspiracy.
Well, Dominic, perhaps I misstated the fact that Manafort rolled up or did not roll up in a wheelchair this time. Apparently, same tact. I'm bad. My bad.
President Trump would not be able to pardon Manafort, 69 years old, on the state charges, which are separate from the federal cases for which Manafort was sentenced. In court Wednesday, Judge Amy Berman Jackson criticized Manafort and his attorneys for repeatedly casting his hard fall from power as collateral damage from a special counsel investigation of Russia interference in the 2016 presidential campaign. Here's a quote from the judge. This defendant is not public enemy number, but he's also not a victim either. There's no question this defendant knew better, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Outside the courthouse, Crudy, Manafort attorney Kevin Downing called Jackson's 43-month sentence callous, hostile, and totally unnecessary. He emphasized that the judge, however, had acknowledged that there was no evidence of any collusion in the case.
Now, Dominic, we've got some sound of that, do we not?
We do have some sound, but we also have the judge's exact quotes from that. I think this is another Washington Post
I've got that
article.
piece
You have
in
that,
front of
Cody?
me, buddy. Perhaps I can help you
Please
along.
do. Before we play Manafort's attorney afterwards, what did the judge say regarding this collusion issue?
Well, just starting with the headline at Aaron Blake at the Washington Post, Paul Manafort's judge strongly rebukes, not weakly rebukes, Dom, strongly rebukes.
Very strongly.
Manafort and Trump's no collusion refrain. Again, Aaron Blake, the author of this piece, Judge Amy Berman Jackson, made several strong statements before sentencing former Trump campaign manager, chairman, Paul Manafort on Wednesday, but one in particular struck at the core of President Trump's personal defense in the Russian investigation. She said the no collusion mantra is bunk. Manafort's legal teams have suggested repeatedly in the sentencing memo that the fact that he hadn't been found to have colluded with Russia should be a mitigating factor when it came to how much time he should serve in prison. But Jackson not only rejected that argument, sentencing him to 43 additional months in prison, she also rejected the entire argument behind it, much as I often reject your arguments, Tom. The no collusion refrain that runs through the entire, I'm quoting here, Dom, the no collusion refrain that runs through the entire defense memorandum is unrelated to matters at hand, she said. The no collusion mantra is simply a non sequitur. She then added the no collusion mantra also not accurate because the investigation is still ongoing. Now back to Blake's writing. Claiming something like there was no collusion as a defense is within any defendant's right. It's basically saying there was no crime. The problem with Trump and his allies and Manafort's legal team in this case was that they have tried to stretch it much further. They have argued that the lack of proof of collusion thus far is somehow dispositive. They are suggesting that because it hasn't been proved, it never happened. The Shaggy defense, Tom.
Right.
Trump has tried this trick repeatedly for months, misrepresenting statements by key players in the Russia probe. When Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein last year announced indictments of Russians suspected of influencing the 2016 election, he emphasized that those specific indictments included no allegations of collusion. The president and the White House said that Rosenstein had essentially just exonerated the Trump campaign when, in fact, the case simply wasn't about collusion, Dom.
So I think we can say the judge, based on the reporting, of course, there's no cameras in the federal courtroom, specifically addressed this issue. Now, do we have the sound of Manafort's attorneys outside it? Let's hear Manafort's attorneys address the press, the public, a few protesters, specifically on this issue.
Protesters are
truth will not be a
tellers.
surprise. Judge Jackson conceded that there was absolutely no evidence of any Russian collusion in this case. So that makes two courts have ruled no evidence of any collusion with any Russian.
That's not what
Part
she
number
said.
two. Very
That's
sad.
not what she said.
Very sad
That's not what
day
she said.
for such a callous, harsh sentence that is totally unnecessary. Much like this.
You guys are liars now. You're not lawyers. You're liars.
You're not lawyers, you're liars.
How very true. What are you talking about? She specifically addressed that issue. Yeah, there was also no murder charge either, but that wasn't being investigated. What are you talking about?
I just want to paint a picture for you because I was just watching this. There is, while this person in a suit trying to remain very, very, very serious, and there's no
attorney,
collusion and
yeah.
everything.
Stoic.
Right behind there's a person in a purple wig with a giant purple sign that says, "This is a sign." It's really hard to keep him, to take him seriously at that point too.
Everybody loves the circus.
It is a circus.
I've got a little more from Aaron Blake, the circus that is the Donald Trump presidency. His Twitter stream. Apparently, Twitter's still working, Dom. Here is what he tweeted talking about Trump. Both the judge and the lawyer in the Paul Manafort case stated loudly and for the world to hear that there was no collusion with Russia, he said. But the witch hunt hoax continues as you now add these statements to House and Senate Intelligence and Senator Burr. So bad for our country, ! The Manafort's team use of the no collusion mantra was so conspicuous that Jackson mused that it might be intended for another audience besides the court, an apparent reference to Trump and the possibility of Manafort landing a pardon. And after sentencing, Downing came out, and you just played this, Tom, came out and immediately proved her point for her. For anyone who was in the courtroom today, what I'm about to say will not be a surprise. Judge Jackson conceded that there was absolutely no evidence of Russian collusion in the case. So that makes two courts that have ruled no evidence of any collusion with any Russians. And of course, you heard the crowd's reaction in real time. Liar!
And again,
liar!
The judge specifically, quote, the no collusion refrain that runs through the entire defense memorandum is unrelated to matters at hand. The no collusion mantra is simply a non sequitur. The no collusion mantra is also not accurate because the investigation is still ongoing.
A little bit more from Aaron Blake here at the Post. Downing was jeered and called a liar by the crowd assembled. And for reasons described above, it's hard to blame the crowd. He had done exactly what Jackson had just rebuked him for doing. Oversold the fact that collusion was not proved in this particular case, which wasn't even about collusion. The media has been pointing out for months that Trump is overselling all of these examples. But on Wednesday, a judge whose job it is to decide people's guilt or innocence put it on the record. Again, from Berman Jackson, court is one of those places where facts still matter.
Yes.
If the people don't have the facts, democracy can't work. It's if she was speaking directly to the man whose campaign Manafort once ran. You know, Donald Trump got a lot of coffee for the man to hear Trump tell it.
7.5 years, and the state of New York laying down 16 more indictments from a grand jury on issues that Donald Trump will not be able to save Manafort from.
Not pardon him from, certainly,
No,
Dom, and
nope.
since he's already been convicted. And during the course of his elocution, Dom, my understanding, even pled guilty to the specific cases that he was not found guilty of. Right. You know, the hung jury in the first trial only found guilty on, 8 of 18 counts. Well, the other 10, he also pled to those.
Crudy, briefly on these other charges before we go to break here. New York Times also talking about this story. Earlier this month, Manafort was sentenced in Virginia to nearly 4 years in prison, one of the federal cases, far less time than prosecutors requested. On Wednesday, he got an additional 3.5 years. And here's the hook. He could face, according to the New York Times, on these 16 indictments, up to 25 years in New York State prison if convicted of the most serious charges in the new indictment.
Well, he is the coolest age to start, Dom. 69, numerically the coolest age.
Smoking dope and drinking wine.
I don't know if he'll be doing much more of that. Folks, we are the Devil's Advocates. Got a big show ahead. It is a Manafort Wednesday, and we've got our Mueller time expert. We've got Jim Santelli. He's going to make the happy hour so much happier today. And also, Lisa Neubauer. Judge Neubauer to you, Dom.
Chief Judge Neubauer to you, Crudy.
Well, she is joining me in the Broadcast Bunker 2.0 here at Madison. Lisa Neubauer, we introduce her to the Devil's Advocates audience. She's coming in the 4 o'clock hour. More talk about Manafort, Cohen, Trump, and of course, no collusion. Come back with us.
None whatsoever. Everybody knows it.
Phones are open. Everybody knows it. That number, 844-967-2789.
The collusion delusion.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
But there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that.
I wish you weren't a liar.
Where is the collusion?
What's with you, man? Come on!
We want to find the collusion.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use when we pre-treat the carpet. So this helps dig up any of that stuff that's deeper in your carpet that the vacuum doesn't get. We're going to provide that intermediary step before we clean with our empowered water.
Call Zero Res today, 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
I don't see the support. I don't support it.
Wisconsin Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald doesn't see the support for legalized medicinal marijuana, even though the 2018 midterm referendum in 11 counties and the city of Waukesha passed by over 79%. Call Scott Fitzgerald at 608-266-5660. Tell him you support legalized medicinal marijuana.
No, I don't see it.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org. P4ppc.org.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The Forum, hosted by Sherwin Hughes, exclusively on Real Resistance Radio. Call in live at 844-967-2789 and give your thoughts, feelings, and opinions on local and national topics. Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to noon. It will not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, hosted by Sherwin Hughes on Real Resistance Radio. Always streaming live on realresistanceradio.com.
The devil's advocates may not agree on much, but funny is...
Yeah. Turn it up a little
bit longer, Tom. A little bit longer.
I'm patient. Here we go.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
Yeah.
In the jungle, the quiet jungle.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. You can join us on the phones at 844-967-2789. If you want to see a visual representation, you got to go to YouTube right now, the Devil's Advocates radio show on YouTube, because Facebook ain't working.
Dominic, with your ADHD, I don't know, was that the Nylons version of The Lion Sleeps Tonight? I didn't know if you'd wait long enough, if you could be patient long enough for the punchline to come up, Dom. Setting up a story, if you will.
Lay it on me, man.
Okay, CNN reporting exclusively. Lawyer said Michael Cohen would sleep well tonight after speaking with Rudy Giuliani, Gloria Borger, and Jeremy Herb reporting for CNN. An attorney who said he was speaking with President Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, reassured Michael Cohen in April of 2018 via email that Cohen could sleep well tonight because he had friends in high places. Yeah. Unfortunately, I've only got friends in low places, Dom.
Yeah.
According to a copy of an email obtained by CNN. They've got the email. Was he looking for Garth Brooks over there? He's thinking, like, is it worth it? Do we go there?
I think we stay with In the Jungle, man.
Coming back to the CNN article. I hate to get so far afield.
I know. 2
emails, both dated April 21st, 2018. And among documents provided to Congress by the president's former attorney and fixer, I love that term, do not specifically mention a pardon. Cohen, in his closed-door congressional testimony, has provided these emails in an effort to corroborate his claim that a pardon was dangled before he decided to cooperate with federal prosecutors, according to sources familiar with his testimony, Dom. But the attorney who wrote those emails, Robert Costello, told CNN that Cohen's interpretation of the events is utter nonsense.
Put the beer down, Crudy.
I'm not drinking beer, but I did have a few too many sodas, perhaps. Root beer, they're all bubbly. Costello said that Cohen asked him to raise the issue of a pardon with Giuliani. Now you got me embarrassed. I read on, and this is a quote, Dom. I'll try to read it without flatulence or burping.
Please, good luck.
Does dangled mean that Cohen, raised it, and I mentioned it to Giuliani, and Giuliani said the president is not going to discuss pardons with anybody? If that's dangling it for about 15 seconds, said Costello, who has a 4-decade-long relationship with Giuliani and was exploring potentially representing Cohen. The first time I kind of danced around the issue because Michael brought it up with me, and I told him, look, this is way too premature, but if you want me to bring it up, I'll bring it up, and I did. A source with knowledge of Cohen's thinking at the time disputes Costello's version of the events and insists it was Costello who was pushing his relationship with Giuliani. Another source familiar with the email said that Trump's legal team was trying to keep Cohen in the fold as a way to keep him quiet, hinting that a pardon could be in the mix at some point. But Trump's team say it was Cohen and his lawyers who were bringing up the prospect of a pardon. The two completely contradictory narratives come as congressional committees grapple with the issue of a pardon in Cohen, specifically who initiated the pardon conversations and how far they progressed. Cohen's testimony has sparked a full-blown fight with Republicans accusing Cohen of lying when he said he had never asked for, nor would I accept, a pardon from Trump. Giuliani told CNN the emails Cohen provided to Congress weren't about pardons. Again, a quote, Dom, this time, Rudy Giuliani. That was about Michael Cohen thinking that the president was mad at him. I called Costello to reassure him that the president was not mad. It wasn't long after the raid, and the president felt bad for him. Folks, we are the devil's advocates. You can see Trump. He's such an empathetic man.
Yes, he does. He oozes
Sleep
empathy.
well, young Michael. You'll be sleeping with the fishes soon is what I suspect he was telling him. Keep your mouth shut. Don't be a rat. Come back with us. We won't rat you out. More Devil's Advocates phone lines open. We'll take the calls. 844-967-2789.
Want to see the super sexiest political show on earth? Check out the Devil's Advocates on YouTube.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
I wasn't prepared to be a caregiver to Mom. I had no idea how hard it would be and what I would need to know. Things I never thought of, like how to improve her mood and ways for me to stay positive. Luckily, I found the Caregiving Resource Center from AARP. It had articles about the basics, but also information about the hurdles I was facing.
Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving. Articles, tips, and tools to help you both care for your loved one and care for yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
When you shop Goodwill, you don't just bring home a vintage dress or cat lamp. You bring home so much good to your community because everything you buy funds local job training and more. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com. Bradzog, owner of Zero Res Madison, resisting dirty carpets and harsh chemicals. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We're not using any soaps. We're not using any chemicals. We cost about the same as the other guys. You look at it and you go, where's the downside? You got a completely green clean. It's awesome. We guarantee it. There's no downside.
There's no downside. Use Zero Res. Call Zero Res today. 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates, where there's always time for Scott Walker bashing.
Welcome to our good buddy, Congressman Mark Pocan. Mark, in some small part, this little radio product, the entire rationale for buying a radio station was opposition to Scott Walker. One person's telling me, be humble, Crudy. Take a day and just be humble. And another person's telling me, no, dance on Scott Walker's grave. So, Congressman, I've always admired your sage advice. Sir, what should I do? How should I react to this?
We should waltz, we should polka, and we should two-step. We should be dancing on this right now. To your credit, and I do want to give you guys credit. In Milwaukee, we have seen a shift, especially the suburban areas, from when we had just conservative radio to having you guys there. We have seen a shift in that area, and that's important because I think when people hear ideas, we do better. And I want to thank you for being there and doing what you do.
Hashtag Walker bashing.
Bye, Felicia.
For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Stu Daniels with your headlines. 8 newborn puppies were found in a garbage can by police in Marshfield yesterday. Wood County prosecutors are charging 56-year-old Robert M. Wild with misdemeanor mistreatment of animals and abandonment of animals. The puppies, who are doing well, may eventually be put up for adoption by the Marshfield Area Pet Shelter. And the 5-county Miller Park sales tax could end early next year. Members of the board that oversees the Southeast Wisconsin Professional Baseball Park District voted yesterday to proceed with plans to end the tax by March of next year. The tax cost $1 for every $1,000 spent and has been in effect since 1996. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio.
You're listening to the radio show your mother warned you about. Tom and Kreutz are the devil's advocates.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. We're going to get to the phones in just a minute. 844-967-2789. Dom, you had an update. Cohen has been accused of perjuring himself again in congressional testimony. Did he or didn't he seek a pardon from Donald Trump? Apparently provided emails today as proof, that they were telling him, oh, you've got friends in high places. You'll sleep well tonight, Michael. Well, is that dangling a pardon? Or just reassuring a friend that the boss ain't mad at him?
Of course it's dangling a pardon. It's like, hey, I'd hate to have something bad happen to you. It's just like that's a threat. I mean, you don't have to actually say it for it to be true.
Almost like when Michael Cohen said the boss talked to him in code, Dom.
Almost like that.
Like mobster code.
But it may be a moot point. Crudy Politico reporting the chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, Rep. Elijah Cummings, announced Wednesday his panel will not take any action against Cohen after his attorney contradicted his testimony that he never asked President Donald Trump for a pardon. And here's a quote from Cummings. Our practice on this committee is to give witnesses an opportunity to clarify their testimony, and that is what Mr. Cohen has done. I do not see the need for further action, at least at this time. Now, Cummings' statement comes after Cohen's attorney sent a letter to Cummings on Tuesday, yesterday, saying that the sentencing question referred to the period after Cohen left the Trump Joint Defense Agreement in June of 2008. The attorneys say in the letter that, quote, President Trump publicly dangled the possibility of pardons when commenting about ongoing investigations to his joint defense team. Cohen asked his then attorney to discuss possible pardon options with Trump's attorney for himself at the time he was still on the joint defense team, the letter said. At no time did Mr. Cohen personally ask President Trump for a pardon, or did the president offer Mr. Cohen the same, the letter continued. In retrospect, the above sentence in his testimony could have been clearer and more complete regarding the distinction between the pre-JDA and post-JDA time periods. So he meant he meant after June of 2018.
I'm less clear. less clear now than before you started telling the story.
When Cohen left the Trump Joint Defense Agency, from that point... Agreement. From that point, there was no discussion, and that's the clarification that Cohen's attorneys sent yesterday to Elijah Cummings, and Elijah apparently is accepting that distinction.
Do you accept that distinction, Dom? Do you think Cummings is perhaps giving a little political cover fire for Michael Cohen? He's the star witness. We all remember that day. It was, a couple Wednesdays ago. Now, do you think Elijah Cummings is effectively doing a partisan thing?
Nah, I think there's enough room there to make the legal distinction. I mean, if you've got a joint defense agreement with the president and things that were discussed then versus, after the agreement, after you've been raided, after you no longer have that agreement, that's a whole different legal life. So, I mean, there's enough wiggle room there. I see where he's going. But we do have sound, I believe, today, Donald Trump. Once again, the judge in the Manafort sentencing specifically saying, this comments of no collusion is a non sequitur. It's inaccurate as the investigation is still ongoing. Then we heard his attorney, Manafort's attorney, outside getting mocked by the protesters, saying, hey, we for the second time, a second judge has said no collusion. And of course, with Trump, that's all you need. Hell, you need less than that. But Trump agrees. He was speaking today. Let's hear what Trump had to say about this issue, if you would please, Brian.
Have no idea. I can only tell you one thing. Again, that was proven today. No collusion. There's no collusion. There's no collusion, and there hasn't been collusion. And it was all a big hoax, and you know it. It was done and stated by the Democrats because they lost an election that they should have won because the Electoral College is a big advantage for Democrats, not for Republicans. And they should have, and I ran the clock out. We ran the whole thing. You ran up the East Coast from North Carolina to Pennsylvania. Then we go up to Wisconsin and Michigan, states that hadn't been won for many, many years. We won those states. And they said, how do we solve this horrible problem? We lost an election that, in theory, some people, I didn't, but some people thought they were going to win, right? And they said, I have an idea. Let's blame Russia. It was a hoax. It was all a big hoax. And now you're seeing it. Today, again, no collusion. The other day, no collusion. There was no collusion. When I had to go to Wisconsin, I went to Wisconsin. When I had to go to Michigan and Pennsylvania, and South Carolina and North Carolina, that's where I'd go. When I had to go to Florida, which we won easily, I went to Florida. You don't call Russia when you go to Florida. Russia won't help you much.
But unfortunately, as we must reiterate once again, Mr. President, the collusion, the conspiracy was not on the table. Those were not investigated. Those were not the crimes that were even investigated, Mr. Trump. What are you talking about? You're as bad as Manafort's lawyers.
Dominic, he didn't need collusion in Florida, but it helped a lot in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, I suspect.
I would suspect.
So I'm convinced no collusion. He said it very strongly, Dom.
With power. I mean, it was a very powerful statement.
When you strongly deny, then you must be believed, right? At least if you're a dictator or sort of an authoritarian in general. At least that's the rule that Trump lives by.
Strong, powerful.
I take him at his word.
Nobody's stronger than me.
That nobody ever said that about Donald.
Dominic got something to say about Donald Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani. He's got some troubles on the home front, but quickly, let's get to Mark on the phone. Don't want to have troubles with our buddy Mark. Mark from the SAC, welcome back to the show. Almost forgot to get you there, man. What do you got for us?
That's okay. I'm just curious. Is when these judges are going to have a belly full of this and charge the lawyer, Manafort's lawyer, with contempt because he's out there saying the exact opposite of what she just got done stating in court. And I mean, I would, if I was a judge, I'd be a little annoyed with because she was cautioning him. You shouldn't be talking like this. And,
yeah, but
and after right does it again.
After she sentenced his guilty client, right. I mean, he can put whatever sort of spin he wants on it. It's not like, and let's not forget, Amy Berman Jackson is also the judge in the Roger Stone. And Roger Stone's under the full gag order, and he's out there doing the full Monty. He's exposing himself continuously on social mediums. Apparently even wrote a book or a new printing of a book with new information. You wonder who's going to pay the price. Could be Roger Stone.
It's to be hoped. One can only hope that she'll just say, well, you guys are conspiring here and throwing all this information back and forth to throw mud in the water, and maybe she'll just have a belly full too. I mean, it's
Mark, we know that's
guy.
the case, right? That's kind of the whole point, right? I mean, now that the attorney has said it, even though the judge specifically said the opposite, Donald Trump picks it up, and now all the right wingers are going to run with it. But of course, how do you? You may as well say murder instead of conspiracy. Oh, he wasn't convicted of murder. No murder. Great. No speeding either. But there were charges, and what he was charged with, and what the investigations were regarding, he was found guilty. Unfortunately, those investigations did not include conspiracy or conspiring or colluding with the Russians. That investigation, the Mueller investigation, that continues. Thanks for the call, Mark.
And you know who else is also going to have a day in court this week? Also on Wednesday. That's today, Dom. Michael Flynn is scheduled to appear before Judge Emmett Sullivan in a Virginia courtroom to discuss whether he should finally be sentenced for crimes he pled guilty to more than a year ago. Let's not forget the last time, wasn't it Flynn? The last time Flynn was in court, the judge seemed intent upon giving him a long sentence. Not a, who was the Texas judge the other day that gave Manafort the 47 months? That's not what
Ellis.
Flynn was looking at getting. Or maybe Flynn thought he's going to walk away scot-free because he cooperated, and he was looking at something approaching 47 months. Anyways, I read on. Prosecutors were happy with his cooperation last December and recommended no jail time, but you might recall the judge exploded after looking at the evidence, telling Flynn that he had sold out his country and strongly suggesting that Flynn cooperate some more lest he face some real time in jail. On Tuesday night, Flynn's lawyers filed a request for another delay so he can keep cooperating in another case regarding the bizarre alleged plot to kidnap an exiled Turkish cleric living in America and hand him over to the nation's government.
I forgot about that one.
This seems like a wise move considering the judge's previous reaction, Dom. And Mueller's office has behaved oddly about this case. In the latest filing, prosecutors say that while Flynn could potentially testify more, his cooperation is otherwise complete. As former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance told Rachel Maddow on Tuesday, it's unusual for a prosecutor to be willing to give a cooperator credit at sentencing before his cooperation is done, before he has testified. She suggested that there is something we don't know that Bob Mueller's team knows. There's a lot we don't know that Mueller's team knows. There's always the possibility that Mueller's office thinks the former general service to his country makes him a stand-up guy, except for these little hiccups with Russians and Turks. And if that's so, the Mueller investigation isn't quite as unimpeachable as we might have hoped. And on Thursday, Dom, I'm reading from a Salon piece. Manafort's former business partner, Roger Stone. So Stone gets his time in the barrel tomorrow, Dom. Stone will also appear before Judge Berman Jackson to set a trial date for his charges of lying to Congress and obstructing the Russian probe. Stone could be sent to jail immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200 if Jackson determines that his repeated violation of the gag order requires it. Stone has been dancing as fast as he can to explain away his reckless behavior, but is clearly close to running out of chances. A little bit more here, Dom. Maybe I'll go just a little farther in the Salon piece. Prosecutors have asked for a trial date in October, which would normally suggest they're not planning to wrap up their investigation anytime soon. But a couple of U.S. attorneys from the D.C. district have been added to the team, so some legal observers think it's possible this case will be transferred to that office if Mueller closes down his investigation before then. In any case, the Stone saga is just beginning, with or without the special counsel. Roger Stone tomorrow will have our Mueller time expert. We'll have Jim Santel, former U.S. attorney, joining us in the happy hour today, Dom. He'll help us get to the bottom of it. But this is a big day legally. And Mark pointed out, maybe it would be in Manafort's best interest if his lawyer stopped pleading no collusion from the rooftops. But his client is guilty. The sentence has already been handed down in 2 different courtrooms, 16 new felony indictments. If you're hanging your hat on no collusion and you're thinking, I'm doing this for the boss, of course, Trump, and I really, really want a pardon, that plan works great. It's so swell. Right up until the New York prosecutors today dropped state charges, 16 bank fraud felonies, lying on mortgage applications primarily, and this stuff pretty recent, Dom. 2015 to 2017, in part, those crimes were committed while Manafort was working for Trump. Come back with us. We are the Devil's Advocates. Of course, that doesn't mean he colluded, but we know he probably colluded as well. 844-967-2789. Your call's welcome. And a little update on Rudy Giuliani. Dom, sad news. His marriage on the rocks.
Shocking.
You hear about Trump?
Given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power.
Nobody's stronger than me.
If I did a tenth of what she did, I would be in jail today.
The collusion delusion.
You're under arrest, Trump.
When Trump gets the guillotine, you're going to be the first one to go.
I think our side's been proven very strongly, and everybody's talking about it. And frankly, it should be discussed.
You're going to be dead.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use when we pre-treat the carpet. So this helps dig up any of that stuff that's deeper in your carpet that the vacuum doesn't get. We're going to provide that intermediary step before we clean with our empowered water.
Call Zero Res today, 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
I loved playing high school sports. I loved the competition, the camaraderie, the bands, the crowds, all the pageantry, and I wanted to keep playing. But I graduated. No colleges called, and neither did the pros. So, to stay close to the game I loved, I decided to become a high school official. A referee. When I played high school sports, I learned the importance of integrity, good sportsmanship, and respect for the rules. Now, as a high school official, I get to help model these same values to others. Maybe the colleges and the pros didn't call, but the kids in Wisconsin did. And now, I'm enjoying the competition, the camaraderie, the bands, the crowds, and all the pageantry of high school sports all over again.
Interested in becoming a licensed high school official? Go to highschoolofficials.com to learn more and begin the application process.
The Devil's Advocates.
Doug from Cudahy.
Right around the time of the uprising, I found you. I started listening, and 2 years later, after I signed the recall and voted, we went out to sing along with the singers on my birthday. And they were so cool, and it's one of the greatest memories that I had. And ever since I started listening to the Devil's Advocates, I have been woke. I haven't missed one vote since. You guys have really done wonders for our community, and I'm just so happy you're on the air.
Making radio great again. Charged, never convicted. Dom and Croat are the Devil's Advocates.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show, streaming on the YouTube channel right now. Facebook not working out too well for lots of people in this country.
Zuckerberg!
But you can still join us. We are on the radio. That very rarely goes down. Phone lines are open. Those work too at 844-967-2789.
You see Paul Ryan reversed on his statement from yesterday. Did a full flip-flop. Oh, of course Trump will get reelected. That's spineless, weaselly bastard.
He has no political loss. He's not, right? I mean, why would you do that? Why would you flip-flop? What, political pressure? What, you running for something, Paul?
Somebody threatened to not write him a check.
Oh, of course. That's right. He's a big lobbyist now.
You know who's not
really
getting
proud
paid?
of what we've been able to do.
And Paul Ryan is unemployed, although I suspect he's getting paid, Dom. But, working for free, pro bono work, not always good for the marriage. Just ask my wife. Or Rudy Giuliani's now estranged wife, I report, or more accurately, Victoria Becky Impis at the Daily Beast reports Rudy Giuliani and his estranged wife, Judith Nathan's divorce has hit such a high level of bitterness that a judge told them not to be in the same room if they run into each other at social clubs. Here's what was stated by Lisa Zetterman, one of Giuliani's lawyers. There was an issue at one of the clubs last week. She told Judge Michael Katz at a Wednesday hearing in the couple's divorce case. So Giuliani's got litigation going on all around him, Dom. Jeez. We're going to ask that Miss Giuliani just keep her distance from Mr. Giuliani when they're at the clubs together, and their children as well, and not take photographs, because that was what was happening last weekend, I'm advised, at one of the clubs.
What, the clubs? Like a health club or a nightclub? What are we talking about?
Country
here?
Clubs, Don. Come on, think rich people.
I'm thinking glow sticks and ecstasy, but okay, I got you.
Attorney said he just wants to be left alone. One of Nathan's lawyers, that's the ex, responded by claiming Giuliani, President Trump's personal lawyer, was simply embarrassed to be seen spending money on his rumored girlfriend's daughter. Giuliani later denied this. Here's a statement from Katz. I'm tired of hearing about Mr. Giuliani's personal life, Katz said, later instructing whoever is in the room first is allowed to stay in the room. Now, this is a judge talking in a hearing today.
Oh, my God.
The person who walks into the room later, he said, can go to another room, and vice versa. Another one of Nathan's lawyers, Bernard Clare, claimed she went into the gift shop at the club. She saw Mr. Giuliani. He got anxious and yelled at her. He says he didn't yell at her. She says she didn't take pictures. Katz remarked, again, this is the judge, Katz, remarked dryly, saying this has provided plenty of material for the press to write about. And I'm glad they did. At the Daily Beast, I'll read more. Again, a quote. I'm sorry that your case seems to be getting more contentious, more than less contentious, the judge said at one point. I think we're going to be moving this case along to a lengthy and unpleasant trial. During the heated hearing, Claire also said Giuliani filled out a change of address for Nathan, now for his ex-wife, filled out a change of address for her without permission. So all of her mail goes to him. The accusation left Giuliani so frustrated that he grumbled. That's total BS at one point. His lawyer emphatically denied this after the meeting. What, that he swore in open court?
Or is that mail fraud, which would be, what, federal? That's a federal charge, right?
The Siderman, who also, well, I'm not sure if you fill out a change of address form. It's probably frowned upon in a, family court proceeding, though.
If you fill out a name of a change of address form for your ex or for a political enemy.
Currently married, because the trial has not brought closure to the marriage, Tom. Anyways, Siderman also alleged that Nathan had prevented the release of $750,000 to Giuliani that was in an account by writing the bank, flouting a court order. Giuliani can't get to his money, Dom. Here's what his lawyer said. The money needs to be released to Mr. Giuliani. Apparently, he's got needs, buddy. Claire claimed that this was an issue related to the bank and that Nathan wasn't trying to be obstructive. Nathan's lawyers also alleged that Giuliani hadn't paid the bills for her mother's nursing home, nor the landscaper, Dom.
Oh, jeez.
Giuliani's lawyers insisted that he paid and that she holds bills, so it appears Mr. Giuliani isn't paying them. It was revealed in court that Giuliani provided over 19,000 documents to the ex-wife's attorneys. Nathan is part of discovery. Giuliani's lawyers accused Nathan of keeping 2 bank accounts under wraps and failing to provide information about her jewelry when they both when they are both supposed to exchange information about their assets. The jewelry, which is an easy thing. Produce your jewelry, she huffed. Apparently that's Giuliani's attorney, Dom. A little bit more. This is how she greeted Rudy in court. Prior to the hearing, Nathan, who sported a power blue blazer, black skinny jeans, and a gray heels with black bows, approached Giuliani to shake his hand. Giuliani, who looked taken aback, extended his hand stiffly. What, no description of what Giuliani was wearing?
Right.
I'm sure it was like pajama bottoms, clown shoes,
robe,
and a sport coat. Nathan, who filed for divorce from Giuliani in April after 15 years of marriage, had previously asked him, and I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but listen to this, $63,000 in monthly spousal support. As the divorce case winds through the court, she also asked for Giuliani to pay housing expenses for 6 homes and incidental costs, such as memberships at the country clubs.
But just
the ones where they
can't be in the same room together.
You just pay for it. And, if I'm in the room first, you leave. During a court proceeding in November, Nathan's lawyer had claimed that Giuliani cried poor after she hit him with divorce papers. I'll get to the Trump part here in a minute, Dom. Mr. Giuliani has taken it upon himself to radically change the financial status quo that existed prior to this action, Claire had said at the time, describing it as conduct that can only be characterized as SIDS, sudden income deficit syndrome. Is that like Trump derangement syndrome? Claire discussed tax returns during the earlier proceedings and claimed that Giuliani made $7.9 million in 2016 and $9.5 million in 2017. Giuliani and Nathan's monthly expenses are some $232,000 and $238,000 each, respectively. Claire also alleged that Giuliani was trying to shortchange Nathan after lavishly spending $286,000 on his alleged girlfriend. Ooh, that's the problem, Dom, I suspect right there. Anyways, here's the important quote. He says, "I'm going to work for Donald Trump for free," Claire told the judge. "I'm going to be one of his personal lawyers for free." Mr. Giuliani cannot, after commencing the action, say, "Okay, all right, I'm going to take President Trump on his offer for working for free. That will require me to lose $4 to $6 million and possibly lead to his gold digger wife divorcing him." Come back with us. More Devil's Advocates. Hour 2 is next.
If politics is boring, you're doing it wrong. Check out more at domandcroot.com.
When you control the mail, you control information.
You concerned about speaking up at work? Do you feel like you have no say in your day-to-day work routine? Join Teamsters Local 344. Call 414-258-4545. Get a seat at the table. Join your brothers and sisters in negotiating for better wages, hours, and working conditions, and be part of the most powerful union in North America. Teamsters Local 344 covers sales and service throughout Southeast Wisconsin and package and airlines statewide. Contact Teamsters Local 344 at 414-258-4545 or at local344.org.
Knowing your breasts can save your life. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
5 your local single-source IT solutions provider. Specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy 59s.com.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
The U.S. grounds the 737 MAX. Paul Manafort learns his sentence. I'm Mike Moss. Under growing pressure, the United States has grounded the 737 MAX jet after 2 crashes in 5 months. The President made the announcement at the White House.
Boeing is an incredible company. They are working very, very hard right now. And hopefully they'll very quickly come up with the answer
But until they do, the planes are grounded.
Congressman Dan Kildee applauds the decision.
This is one of those cases where we should clearly err on the side of public safety, at least until we have a better understanding of what is the underlying cause behind these crashes.
Correspondent Tom Foreman says the FAA has developed new tracking information on the Ethiopian Airlines crash.
Now they say they have a more complete picture of almost the entire flight, and the pattern looks a good deal like what happened with Lion Air last fall.
The president's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was sentenced in federal court today to 3.5 years on top of the 4 he received last week.
When Paul Manafort's attorney, Kevin Downing, came out of the courthouse here to deliver a message that might have been earmarked for President Trump, protesters tried to drown him out.
Judge Jackson conceded that there was absolutely no evidence of any Russian collusion in this case. So that makes 2 courts have ruled no evidence of any collusion with any Russian.
Paul Manafort's sentence will include credit for time served. His bail was revoked last year by Judge Jackson because of the allegations regarding witness tampering. Now the waiting game is on to see whether President Trump will pardon him. Bob Costantini at the Federal Courthouse, Washington.
The British Parliament will vote on whether to delay Brexit tomorrow. Today it voted not to engage Brexit without a deal to move forward. On Wall Street, the Dow was up 148, the S&P up 19 points.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison, resisting dirty carpets and harsh chemicals. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We're not using any soaps. We're not using any chemicals. We cost about the same as the other guys. You look at it and you go, where's the downside? You got a completely green clean. That's awesome. We guarantee it. There's no downside.
There's no downside. Use Zero Res. Call Zero Res today. 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
This dude is a clown, and the Republicans are traitors, regardless of whatever they say. The Democrats are one thing. I'm not a Dem, obviously, but the Republicans are traitors because they just wanted to win an election.
It will not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know.
God bless you. Continue what you're doing, brother.
Thank you.
I love your show, man.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
The Forum, hosted by Sherwin Hughes, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to noon on Real Resistance Radio.
Data rates may apply.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has placed a moratorium on the state's death penalty.
Newsom has signed an executive order putting a stop to executions in spite of voters approving the practice in 2016. Many say he's usurping the will of the voters.
The will of the voters is also entrusted in me on the basis of my constitutional right to grant a reprieve,
which he has done now for 737 death row inmates. Newsom says it's within his constitutional rights to put the death penalty on hold during his entire time in office.
The law does not change as it relates to the death penalty.
He says no one's getting out. Everyone remains on death row. It's just, he says, he will not sign off on executing anyone. It should come as no surprise, he says. He's always been against the death penalty. I'm Jim Roop.
A ferocious winter storm is ripping across Colorado on its way to the Great Plains and parts of the Midwest, bringing blizzard conditions and a flood threat to a number of states. Hundreds of flights bound for or departing from Denver have been canceled, and thousands of power outages have been reported in the Denver.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Wisconsin. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. That means it could be you, your best man, your worst man. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its prediabetes awareness partners.
For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Stu Daniels with your headlines. Milwaukee police and the FBI are still looking for Darius Higgins in connection with the abduction of his 2-year-old daughter and the killing of her mother, Sierra Robinson, on Monday. A flood watch has been issued until Friday morning by the National Weather Service for the Milwaukee and Madison areas. And 8 newborn puppies were found in a garbage can by police in Marshfield yesterday. Wood County prosecutors are charging 56-year-old Robert M. Wild with misdemeanor mistreatment of animals and abandonment of animals. Forecast for Milwaukee and Madison tonight, rainy and windy, lows in the mid-40s. Tomorrow, windy and rainy with thunderstorms possible and highs around 60 degrees. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves' corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show, Hour 2. Dom, I've been joined here in the broadcast bunker 2.0 by a fine guest, a candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court. She is Chief Judge Lisa Neubauer. Judge Neubauer, welcome to the Devil's Advocate.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Now, we and my buddy Dom in Milwaukee as well, Judge Neubauer, we briefly bumped into each other. I don't know if you realized, but I recognized you yesterday. We were both on West Washington. I'd met you once prior at Tony Evers' inauguration. And that was obviously a big day for Tony, but also a big day. Your daughter is a sitting state lawmaker. You were also at her inauguration. Is that correct?
Yes, I was in Madison for my daughter Greta's inauguration. She's a state representative from Racine, where my husband and I live, where we've raised our kids. And Greta was elected in a special election, and then she was reelected. And so Jeff and I went up for her swearing in.
And Jeff, your husband, and if people are unfamiliar, your husband was a politically active sort. He was the former party chair of the Democratic Party of the state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
And I met him briefly as well. Now, as you are running for a judicial post, and
Right.
let me start by saying, I find it quite odd that judges have to run for office. And quite frankly, the fact that I was able to recognize you in the hallway in a building on West Washington is only in part due to the fact I see your television ads running.
I'm glad to see that you've seen them.
Well,
I'm glad
Lisa,
to hear that.
Judge Neubauer, I don't feel like I should have to interview any judge seeking judicial office, but that's the way it works. So that's the way it works. This is a nonpartisan race, but
Right.
of course, before we talk about your opponent, people are going to say, but you come from a partisan perspective. How do you answer that criticism?
Well, I don't agree with that. You know, I am a woman who's got a 30-year career in the law of my own right, and I was a lawyer at a firm in Milwaukee for almost 20 years. I joined the Court of Appeals 11 years ago, and I really very, very intentionally chose my path of public service on the court, and I'm very, very committed to being a judge, and that requires that we be fair, impartial, independent. The people in our state have to have confidence that when they go into our courts, they're not going to be met with any kind of partisanship, that they're not going to be met with any kind of an agenda, any ideology, any thumb on the scale. And I am fighting to protect our fair, impartial, independent judiciary. And that is the path I have chosen.
Now, on the state judicial level, unfortunately, the reputation through the Court of Appeals, where you currently serve, pretty good. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, perhaps different, once upon a time, had a good reputation. That has changed in part because we have seen some real partisans elected to the court, conservative partisans, perhaps in many cases entirely supported by the Republican Party. Let's stop kidding ourselves. These conservative judges run effectively with the support of the Republican Party. And we have seen many of the rulings coming out of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and they seem like it is the ends justifying the partisan means. Do you think we have seen a diminishment in the reputation of the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
I think that as I travel the state and as I've served in the judiciary now for over 11 years, there is a skepticism in our public about whether our court system is fair. And frankly, that is what this race is all about, and that is why I'm running, because we just can't have that in our state, and we can't have that in any healthy democracy. So I threw my hat in the ring, 11 months ago. I've been all over the state. And the very first courthouse I visited, St. Croix County, and I've heard it in countless other, I've been to about 40 courthouses. The judge said to me, Lisa, when people walk through our doors, there's often I get this feeling, people are skeptical. Am I going to get a fair shake? Is there a level playing field? Is there some thumb on the scale? I've heard that in county after county from the judges. And frankly, that's a big reason why I have now over 340 judges supporting me.
Wow.
And, to give you a little bit of perspective on that, there are 264 trial courts. There are 16 Court of Appeals. I have 340 judges. Now, that includes retired judges, but I've worked with them because I've been on the court for so long. And it includes some municipal judges as well. But it is a huge shout from the judiciary to say we have to have that third branch be the fair, impartial, independent branch in our democracy. We set it up, that there were the two partisan branches and the impartial judiciary. And that's the kind of judge I've been, and that's why I'm getting such incredibly robust support everywhere I go, because people are longing to make sure that we have our judiciary in its rightful place in our democracy.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. That is Lisa Neubauer. She is the chief judge of the Wisconsin Court of Appeals and, of course, a Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate. That election coming up very soon. Chief Judge Neubauer, you mentioned that you were at a firm in Milwaukee for many years. Can you mention the firm? What was your area of litigation?
Yeah, so I was at Foley and Lardner for almost 20 years, actually. I commuted up from Racine to Milwaukee, and I just covered not every single, but all kinds of litigation. But I want to say that during that time, when I was at Foley, I also, I went to law school to basically to get into some kind of public service. That's my true passion. That's why I went to law school. And so when I was at Foley, I always made sure I was giving back with my legal skills in the best way I knew how. So I served on the board of United Way. In Racine, I was on the Board of Legal Action of Wisconsin, which provides legal services to the poor. I did a number of pro bono litigation for people who needed representation. Pro bono is you do it for free. And I've been a tutor in the Racine Public Schools. So, then this opportunity to came and serve the public as a judge. And again, I am just really thrilled and honored to be able to use my skills and my talents in the best way I know how to serve the public.
Judge Neubauer, of course, the right, the conservatives, the Republicans are going to accuse you of being a partisan because of your daughter, because of your husband, because of past donations you gave long before you were a judge. But I would point out your former colleagues and a few conservatives, including Rick Essenberg with Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, and I believe Michael Grebe, who I think headed up Scott Walker's re-election campaign. Was it Grebe that was your colleague at Foley and Lardner?
Yeah.
And he said of you, my understanding, quoted by Daniel Bice in a column in his in the journal Sentinel, both of those conservatives, very well known, said you are not a typical flaming liberal, and there's no way you could have been and had success working for a business litigation firm like Foley and Lautner for 19 years. You are no flaming liberal, according to Essenberg and Michael Grebe. What do you say to those two?
Well, again, it's front and center in this race is the confidence of the people in our judiciary. And when I ran back in 2008, Governor Doyle appointed me, and Justice Bablich on the Supreme Court, he said to me, Lisa, the best way to run a nonpartisan campaign is to get very broad bipartisan support. And I've done that. I've done that every single time I've run. So, I had their support back in 2008, and I also have had that kind of broad bipartisan support in 2014 when I was reelected, and I have that kind of broad bipartisan support this time as well.
Lisa, I want to get a little history on you from you. Chief Judge at the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. I was unaware that you were the Chief Judge. You've been there, you said, 11 years. How did you become the Chief Judge, and what does that say about your peers in the Wisconsin Appeals Court?
Well, the Supreme Court elected me or appointed me to be chief, and they appointed me in 2015. They appointed me again last spring in 2018. Before that, I was the presiding judge of my District 2 Court of Appeals, I think, starting a year after I got there and lasting up until the time I became chief. I've had a lot of leadership roles in my life, both at Foley and also on a number of the boards that I've served on. And people see me as somebody who is collegial and who is not a top-down person. I'm very much in the collaborative mindset in terms of my leadership skills. And a lot of my colleagues on the Court of Appeals urged me to put in to be the chief, and I've really been honored to be doing it. Another piece of this Court of Appeals picture in this race is that my opponent and I are on the same court. And there are 16 Court of Appeals judges. 10 of the current judges are supporting me. 15 of the formers. I have 25 of our Court of Appeals judges who are supporting me. And again, the 15 I worked with, so many of them. So, here in Madison, all 5 of the Court of Appeals judges are supporting me. And to my knowledge, all of the formers in Dane County as well. In Madison, all of the judges that are endorsing in Dane County are supporting me. And, these are the people, everybody says to me, well, how do I know what Lisa, what's her decision making really all about? Well, these are the people that know me, and they know my opponent probably better than anybody in the whole state. And I have 25 of our respective colleagues supporting me. I'm really honored, but I think it really speaks loudly.
And Lisa, I guess one more question before we go to break here briefly. You mentioned the judiciary, fair, impartial, and independent. Curdy and I have been doing this show for about 7 years, and we've seen a lot go on in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And perhaps I was just unaware earlier, but I've come to not respect the court, quite frankly, given the shenanigans and Chokegate and all the stuff going on. What do you think about the language, the vitriol, the discussion politically here in the state of Wisconsin as it's gone on over the years? Certainly since Act 10 here in the state of Wisconsin, it seems to have changed. How do we address that? How do we come together as a state in your mind?
Well, I am hopeful that with my success in this election, that we can set our court on a new path. And it's not just about having it be the person that is most qualified and the most experienced be elected rather than a partisan. It's about somebody who is deeply committed to that role on our Supreme Court and providing that kind of leadership for our state, that we can really say to the people of our state, this court is your court. This court is for the people. This court is the court that stands for democracy in our state. And I'm an optimist, you know. Darn it, I am. And I'm really optimistic that we can get our democracy back on track when it comes to our judiciary.
Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. We'll take a quick break. We are here with Judge Lisa Neubauer. She is a candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And, Judge, I wish we could go case by case and see how are you going to rule on this one. I know you're not going to give us answers on the air, but I'll work her during the commercial break, Dom. And if there are any insights, we will share them with the audience. Come back with us. And Judge Lisa Neubauer, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates, WRRD, 1510 AM, Waukesha, Milwaukee, WTTN, Columbus, Madison. Folks, you are listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Have a drink at Regano's Roman Coin. This neighborhood corner tavern is as classic as the street it occupies. Family owned and operated since 1966, Regano's Roman Coin is located in a former Pabst Tide House on historic Brady Street, serving an array of craft beers with a focus on Wisconsin breweries. Also, weekly drink specials, trivia on Wednesdays, seasonal sporting events, parties hosted for all occasions, and pet friendly. Open 11 a.m. Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, closed on Monday. Regano's Roman Coin, Milwaukee's pet friendly, cash only order and classic corner tavern.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Listening to the Devil's Advocates may expose you to opposing views.
U.S. Senator Ron Johnson joins us on the phone regarding our military influence. Aren't we selling arms right now to Saudi Arabia, and aren't they using, munitions that they have purchased from us in their war?
And if we weren't doing that, because they've got plenty of money, they'll buy less precise munitions from other people, and the bloodshed would be worse.
Well, the blood might be on someone else's hands then, Ron.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about that, Ron.
The Devil's Advocates, tackling the issues you're not allowed to talk about at the dinner table.
And we are back from the 420 break. Thank you so much for listening to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. If you miss any of this fine program, please go online to domandcroot.com. You can listen to and download interviews and podcasts.
Dominic, I'm learning all kinds of stuff about our new friend, Judge Lisa Neubauer. She's a big fan of the Bob Marley, she's telling me.
Nice.
As we return from the 420 break. She is a Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate, currently the chief judge of the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. And I got to ask you, Judge Neubauer, the recusal rules of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which were effectively written by lobbying interests, the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce and the Wisconsin Realtors Association, who first endorsed and then rescinded their endorsement of your opponent in this race, but I digress. My biggest issue is the adopted recusal rules for the Wisconsin Court apparently leaves it at each justice's discretion. And while I certainly thought that millions of dollars coming in on behalf of certain current justices on the court is a good enough reason to step aside, might give guys like me the thought that there is impropriety or at least a conflict, a perceived conflict. What is your thought process on the recusal rules of the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, you set the table in terms of the current rule, and Retired judges, a big group of them, provided a petition to the Supreme Court to adopt a stronger recusal rule that was, was based on inordinate amounts of money that have come into our Supreme Court races. And the Supreme Court didn't even have a hearing on it. And to me, that was shameful. It is really, again, very anti-democratic, in my view, not to even want to hear from the people on such an important issue. So I am all in favor of having hearings, hearing from the public, hearing from the bench, the bar, and the stakeholders, and considering a stronger rule. At the end of the day, it's all about getting the people's confidence in our courts. And I know the difference between me and my opponent is pretty darn significant in terms of whether the people can be confident that that the next justice will be fair, impartial, and independent. And, my opponent has put a lot of information out there for the voters to consider, not only writings, but actions. and I trust the voters to be able to sift through that, and people like you to inform the voters. But, the recusal rule, again, circled back to we have to have the people feel confident that our court system is fair and that it's there for the people, the people's court.
Judge Neubauer, without picking any specific piece of litigation that could, legislation that could turn into litigation and arrive before the court, uniquely, or perhaps not uniquely, but I haven't seen it before, your daughter being a state lawmaker, what do you do when legislation becomes litigation before the court that your daughter may have voted for or against?
I don't really see that as a problem because that has to go through two bodies of the legislature and be signed by the governor. So any law that comes out of our legislative process is the collective input of, all the members of the Assembly, the Senate, and signed by the governor.
Broadly, Judge Neubauer, should gay people have rights and be able to marry each other?
Again, you are obviously referring to the extensive writings of my opponent. And, the one thing I would say about that is these are not writings on, he says, I can set my views aside. Well, this is not, I like pretty sunsets. These are significant constitutional issues. And the people need to look carefully at that.
Judge Lisa Neubauer, we've got a Wisconsin Supreme Court race and election on April 2nd. We encourage you all to vote. And I'm endorsing right now, Dom. I'm voting for Judge Lisa Neubauer. I think it's the right thing to do. If people want to get involved in your campaign, give them a website.
Okay. All right. Wait, one more thing. April 2nd, vote. I think voting has started. Website, judgeneubauer.com. There's a wonderful video my team put together of me being a story about being strip searched by the Chicago police to tempt you.
How did we not get to that story?
There's a little talking heads in there. And also Facebook, Lisa Neubauer.
Judge Lisa Neubauer, Chief Judge Lisa Neubauer, good luck. More Devil's Advocates.
What do basketball, choir, drama club, and marching band all have in common? They're all high school activities that offer learning opportunities not necessarily found in the classroom. They take up just a fraction of a typical Wisconsin high school's budget, and they go a long way to giving young people the tools they need to thrive. High school activities, they're more than extracurricular. They're extra important, too. This message presented by the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
To protect his family from disaster, Steve used his camera phone. Done. By taking pictures of his important documents, Steve can always have them stored online. Learn more simple disaster prep tips at ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the...
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
I don't see the surprise.
I don't support it.
Wisconsin Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald doesn't see the support for legalized medicinal marijuana, even though the 2018 midterm referendum in 11 counties and the city of Waukesha passed by over 79%. Call Scott Fitzgerald at 608-266-5660. Tell him you support legalized medicinal marijuana.
No, I don't see it.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org, p4ppc.org.
1 in 3 adults in America have pre-diabetes, but most don't know it. To let people know it can be reversed before it becomes type 2 diabetes, professional basketball player Julius Randle is doing everything in reverse.
I'm only dunking with reverse windmills. I drove the whole way to practice in reverse. I don't recommend it. This move's called the reverse shuffle. I do recommend it. And it took me months to learn how to speak in reverse, like this. Years 10 almost for diabetes type 2 with living Ben has mama. In other words, my mom has been living with type 2 diabetes for almost 10 years. So together, we want to say to the 84 million Americans at risk, exercise and healthy eating can help reverse prediabetes. Start by taking a simple 1-minute risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Bet he can't say that in reverse.
The Devil's Advocates.
James Santel, he's a former U.S. attorney. He's our guest live on Brady.
Once again, a pleasure to be with you, gentlemen, to talk about the latest news breaking as we speak.
The FBI raided Michael Cohen, Trump's personal attorney, but once they got there, then they went back and got a more thorough warrant and said, we'll take everything.
My first reaction is you need to teach criminal constitutional law. You've got it just right in terms of the process.
They are kind of a big deal.
This is a really big deal.
For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Stu Daniels with your headlines. Milwaukee police and the FBI are still looking for Darius Higgins in connection with the abduction of his 2-year-old daughter and the killing of her mother, Sierra Robinson, on Monday. Police say Higgins is armed and dangerous and is thought to be driving a black or dark blue SUV, possibly a Nissan. Anyone with information should call the Milwaukee Police at 414-935-7302. And a flood watch has been issued until Friday morning by the National Weather Service for the Milwaukee and Madison areas. Several rounds of rain are expected, and combined with the warmer temperatures, most of the remaining snow and ice will be melting over the next 2 days. If you live near a storm drain, do what you can to keep it clear. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio.
The Devil's Advocates, where there's always time for Scott Walker bashing. Hashtag Walker bashing.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Thank you to our most recent guest, a fine one indeed. Join me here in the Bunker 2.0. She is Chief Judge Lisa Neubauer, Chief of the Court of Appeals. And with a little bit of luck in your vote, she will be Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Lisa Neubauer come April 2nd. At least that's what I'm angling for, Dom. I have given her the vaunted Crudy endorsement on air. I mean, if that bump doesn't get her to the finish line, I blame you.
Oh,
you could have endorsed in real time as well.
I do concur. Lisa Neubauer, Chief Judge, Wisconsin Court of Appeals. Absolutely vote for her, Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate. She's got some experience. She's got a lot of love from the other judges, people she's worked with. And we need some confidence in this judiciary, Crudy. I'm not lying, man. When we started doing the show talking about this Wisconsin Supreme Court, and let alone the infighting, but certainly the way they behaved and the recusal rules and all the things that went on with the investigations of Scott Walker, it was just a travesty in my mind to see how blatantly corrupt the Wisconsin Supreme Court is. So I'm down, man. We need a full seat change. And I think she'd be a whole hell of a lot better than the other one.
Well, the other one is Higdorn, but the current justice, the retiring justice, is the former chief, of course, Shirley Abrahamson. So this election on April 2nd does not change the makeup of the court, not if Neubauer wins.
Right, this one holds serve if Neubauer wins.
Yes, but a year from now, April of 2020, Dom, and let's not forget, during the course of the lame duck, Republicans wanted to decouple next spring Supreme Court election from the Wisconsin presidential primary election because there'd be too much focus.
They don't want voters, Crudy. The Republicans don't want voters. Of course, the Dem primary, there'll be a lot of people interested in that race here in Wisconsin. Nice try, Republicans.
Well, even they thought that was a little too brazen, or maybe they didn't think it would stand up in the courts. And the fact that it was, nearly infeasible relative to the time frame of the spring primary, the February primary, the primary partisan election in April, and then they wanted to jam one more on the calendars just to get Dan Kelly, I believe, is the Walker appointee on the Supreme Court that will have to defend his seat, and it shouldn't be his seat.
And that'll be in 2020.
2020, and with success in the next race, and of course we got to hold serve with Neubauer, got to get out there and vote on April 2nd. But a year from now, Dom, we could be dancing in the streets. We could have a court where trials or outcomes are predicated on the merits of the cases and not the desired partisan outcome. And then you got to twist and pretzel yourself in reverse to somehow justify that with some sort of twisted legal logic. See, about every single partisan ruling of the Wisconsin Supreme Court majority.
It's not the statistic that they ruled in this way or that way on these other issues. And you can look at the history of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and say, okay, on these issues, they were fairly nonpartisan. But on the partisan issues, on the very issues that address that come to the core of partisanship here in the state of Wisconsin, the right versus left, those kinds of things, when the right is getting investigated and they rule the way that they did, it doesn't matter if they're more in the line of thinking on the other ones, because those are the ones that separate you as a justice. And we desperately need to heal and respect our judiciary here in the state of Wisconsin, and hopefully this is a good step forward.
Well, Dominic, the conservative bloc of the Wisconsin Supreme Court will never overcome their decision on the John Doe 2 to basically codify campaign corruption, illegal campaign coordination, and when posed with evidence of the bright legal line that Scott Walker, the former governor's campaign, crossed coordination with express advocacy groups, the majority's rationale and decision was go burn the evidence. Literally. Destroy the evidence and fire the special prosecutor here in the state of Wisconsin. A very important vote. First, hold serve. Go vote Judge Lisa Neubauer. And then, a year from now, we'll tell you who to vote for again. But it ain't going to be Kelly, I just suspect. Nothing good ever had the last name of Kelly.
844-967-2789.
That's fun. Your microphone's now down.
Turn his mic off. You can join us on the phones. Crudy, I know we have our friend James Santel, former U.S. attorney, coming in studio, I believe at 5 o'clock today. Are we going to be able to squeeze in some Walker bashing?
Well, I think it would be appropriate, Tom. And the man can't seem to stay off of Twitter when Facebook is down and Instagram is down. All you got to do is go to Twitter, and surely the Wankinator will be out there tweeting, Dom. And, of course, he was doing so also today. Done quite a bit of tweeting in the last, let's call it day or so. And I'd like to share what's Wanker tweeting today. Now, I don't know if you've heard, Dom, Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, has proposed Meatless Mondays. And Meatless Mondays, according to de Blasio, this is a tip of the cap, to the Green New Deal, to the fact that apparently cows create quite a bit of flatulence, and that's bad for the environment. So therefore, if we eat less meat, we need to produce less meat. So let's do Meatless Mondays. Well, Scott Walker, in both a name drop, because of course he wanted us all to know he's a traveling man. He was in New York City yesterday. And Scotty Wanker tweeted out, in honor of Bill de Blasio's crackdown on meat, I stopped by the original Shake Shack in Madison Square Park in New York City, and I ate a shake emoji burger. Exclamation point.
Curdy, technically he wrote, I ate a shack.
A shack. And then,
and then
an
the
emoji.
He ate a shack.
Let's leave Tonette out of this.
Not a shake. He ate a shack.
Dominic, another one. Let's not forget Scott Walker's taking a little credit, or at least seeking to take a little credit for the DNC coming to Milwaukee.
Come on.
First and foremost, Scott Walker hates Milwaukee. And second of all, the most important part that Scott Walker played in the DNC coming to Milwaukee was losing to Tony Evers, you freaking loser.
Yes, thank you for that, Scott Walker.
Is this a campaign promise, something you want to be held to?
Yes, it is.
So within the last 2 days, first Scott Walker sent a little congrats to Milwaukee. And then he tweeted this. The wanker tweeted this. Who would have known that part of our legacy, building Fiserv Forum without a tax increase, would lead to the DNC picking Milwaukee for their convention? Well, but about the $250 million we, the taxpayers, are on for the construction of the Fiserv Forum.
That's a loan. That's entirely different, right? That's bonding versus a tax increase. You see the difference?
Predicated on future NBA player salaries as predicted by the Walker administration, instead of taking $250 million upfront from the Menominee tribe, because they offered to upfront the state's burden. And I mean, hell, Herb Cole did his part too. Doesn't Herb Cole get a little credit, Winkinator? He put $100 million on the table. All you did was lose a freaking election. Here's more. Scott Walker, this headline must cause liberals all over America to have a meltdown.
Oh.
And he's got a picture, a screensaver of the Chicago Tribune. Democrats picked Milwaukee for 2020 convention with an assist from Scott Walker. Very proud of that. I would say the assist, of course, was losing, but a little bit more. A snippet of our interview with former GOP Governor Scott Walker following today's announcement that the 2020 DNC will be in Milwaukee. Well, he retweets Pete Zervakis interviewing him about a Democratic convention, because apparently 2 days ago, that was the most important thing in Scott Walker's life. And then he sent us out some statistics about available hotel rooms in the greater Milwaukee area. There's over 17,791 hotel rooms and more on the way, Walker promises. And then on to, chastising Bill de Blasio for the Meatless Mondays. And then more talk about DNC conventions and political conventions in general, and Scott Walker trying to make the case that simply bringing a political convention to town is no assurity that that state's going to go for, be it the Republicans or the Democrats. And Scott Walker went to the consummate source, Wikipedia, to make his point. He quotes Wikipedia here in a tweet 1 day ago. Despite Tampa having been the site of the 2012 Republican National Convention, Barack Obama ultimately carried the state of Florida with 50% to Mitt Romney's 49%, margin just under 1%. And then DNC held their national convention in Philadelphia in 2016, yet Republican Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes out of more than 6 million cast. So the point that the Wankinators trying to make here, Dom, is what? That the DNC in Milwaukee will not assure the Democratic nominee a victory in the general election. Well, it will if it's Bernie Sanders. That's what I would say. And then more wanker tweeting. And this one, about an hour ago, Dom, and he's got a few more since then. Some Senate Republicans are overthinking this. What Barack Obama did in 2014 was not legal. Of course, he's tweeting about Trump's declared national emergency and the pending vote in the Senate that may find a number of GOP leaders, in my understanding, newest one to join the list of no votes on the emergency declaration, Republican Mike Lee from Utah.
That one's gotta hurt Trump.
But Scott Walker is still defending this emergency action, Dom. Some Senate Republicans are overthinking this. What Barack Obama did in 2014 was not legal, which is why it was blocked by the courts. What real Donald Trump is doing with a national emergency is legal, and presidents used the law 59 times before this at POTUS. I'll make sure the boss knows.
Yes.
But I would point out the last 59 times there were presidential emergencies, none of them were to circumvent the power of the purse bestowed upon the Congress. Congress had the ability to fund the wall. They said, frick no, we're not doing it, Trump. Hell, even when Republicans, even when Paul Ryan was in charge of the House, you had all the legislative majorities for 2 years, Trump, no wall funding, right? And now the democratically run House will not fund the wall, so Trump declares a national emergency. And the shocking part is, Dom, it's not just Scott Walker, it's so many Republicans that would try to justify this extra constitutional action by the President of the United States. Well, Scott Walker's tweeting about it today. When Obama does it bad, when Trump does it good?
That's exactly it. There's only an overreaching, overpowering, heavy hand of the government when it's a Democrat in office. If it's a Republican in office, well, it's all good, it's all okay. But then I have to ask you, Walker, why are guys like Senator Mike Lee bucking Trump on this emergency declaration? Why are Republicans pushing back? Because it's an overreach and they recognize it. Of course, the downfall, besides it being unconstitutional and setting a terrible precedent, is that, perhaps Bernie Sanders gets in there and declares a national emergency over, climate change. Add it to your list.
The Green New Deal, Don? Well, that would blow up Scott Walker's Twitter stream, because AOC is one of his new favorite targets. And the last tweet, and he tweeted twice in the last hour, the Wankinator, just turn on the devil's advocates. Give Twitter a rest, Walker. Spend actual time with family. Apparently, he doesn't like spending time with Tonette. The kids have moved on. He's an empty nester, in somebody else's nest. Well, he's been that way for quite some time. Dom apparently sold off the homestead. Doesn't really have a place of his own.
Oh, that's why he's in Milwaukee, man. He got some donor to give him some, cheap rent, perhaps?
Subsidized Section 8 housing and a high-rise in Milwaukee. Well, here was his most recent tweet, Dom. One last one. In our little segment I'd like to call What's Wanker Tweeting Today, I agree with unions on this one and not with AOC and Senator Markley. He tweeted out the AFL-CIO, a retweet, the AFL-CIO, which represents 12.5 million workers and includes 55 labor unions, slams the Green New Deal in a letter to Senator Markley and AOC. And here's the statement that the AFL-CIO made. We will not accept proposals that could cause immediate harm to millions of our members and their families. And then Scott Walker says, with no irony, I agree with the AFL-CIO.
Does he have any sense of the feelings of what AFL-CIO may think of him? Or because they agree with him, now he's going to throw them out there like they're chums, like they're buddies. They have the same thought process? Really?
Political expediency, Dom.
Hey, Crudy, real quick regarding this emergency declaration, we mentioned Mike Lee. He was leading the compromise efforts, according to the Washington Post, announced plans to defect and vote for legislation to nullify Trump's emergency declaration when a disapproval resolution comes to the floor on Thursday. He made the announcement shortly after hearing directly from Trump Wednesday that his compromise, which would have curtailed presidential emergency powers going forward, was not acceptable. Here's the quote. For decades, Congress has been giving far too much legislative power to the executive branch. While there was attention on the issue, I had hoped the Article 1 Act could begin to take that power back. Unfortunately, it appears the bill does not have an immediate path forward, so I will be voting to terminate the latest emergency declaration.
Republican Senator Mike Lee tells Scott Walker, suck those lemons. Come back with us. Phone lines open. Your call's welcome at 844-967-2789. More Devil's Advocates on the other side.
Nice boys, don't play rock and roll. Nice boys, don't play rock and roll.
No, I'm going to stay for a while. How about that?
What
What would you say you do here?
I used to run track.
Not going to work here anymore anyway.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use when we pre-treat the carpet. So this helps dig up any of that stuff that's deeper in your carpet that the vacuum doesn't get. We're going to provide that intermediary step before we clean with our empowered water.
Call Zero Res today, 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
You listen to Kick-Ass Radio, why not have a kick-ass haircut? Get a hold of Stephanie Jude at MKE Shears. Call or text at 414-241-9734 to book your appointment. Specializing in men's haircuts and styling the East Side for years, Stephanie Jude will give you that kick-ass haircut you deserve. Book your appointment by text or call 414-241-9734. Stop by at 1690 North Franklin and ask for Stephanie Jude at MKE Shears. Tell her the Devil's Advocate sent you.
The Devil's Advocates, where there's always time for Scott Walker bashing.
Welcome to our good buddy, Congressman Mark. Mark, in some small part, this little radio product, the entire rationale for buying a radio station was opposition to Scott Walker. One person's telling me, be humble, Crudy. Take a day and just be humble. And another person's telling me, no, dance on Scott Walker's grave. So, Congressman, I've always admired your sage advice, sir. What should I do? How should I react to this?
We should waltz, we should polka, and we should two-step. We should be dancing on this right now. To your credit, and I do want to give you guys credit. In Milwaukee, we have seen a shift, especially the suburban areas, from when we had just conservative radio to having you guys there. We have seen a shift in that area, and that's important because I think when people hear ideas, we do better. And I want to thank you for being there and doing what you do.
Hashtag Walker bashing.
Bye, Felicia.
The big and tough political talk. Dom and Krutz are the Devil's Advocates.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. You can always join this political party toll-free talk or text 844-967-2789.
Dominic, one more stab at some backyard politics before we turn to Mueller time and Manafort. And our fine guest, James Santel, will be joining you in the Milwaukee studios. Is he coming in or calling in?
I think he's going to try to come in, but it was kind of left up in the air yesterday, so we'll see.
Well, there has been breaking news on that front all day. Let's get one more Wisconsin story in, though. Republican legislators seek to intervene in lawsuit over Wisconsin's abortion laws. According to Patrick Marley, Journal-Sentinel, Republican lawmakers are seeking to intervene in a lawsuit brought by Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin because they don't trust Attorney General Josh Kaul to defend the state's abortion laws. The Democratic Attorney General has filed paperwork in the case saying he intends to represent the state, but hasn't spelled out what legal position he will take. The move is the latest example of state officials from both parties. What's the what about both partiesism? From both parties using taxpayer money to hire private attorneys in legal fights over state laws. Well, Republicans have jammed through a lot of unconstitutional crap. I'm sorry if Democrats have had to hire outside counsel. But I quote from the Republicans. With Attorney General Kaul's lengthy history of forwarding Planned Parenthood's agenda, and with Attorney General's Kaul not signaling how he plans to defend Wisconsin's pro-life laws, it is necessary for the legislature to attempt to intervene in the case. Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald of Juneau said in a statement, Democrats across the country are rolling back pro-life laws and pushing the legalization of late-term abortions. Wisconsin Republicans will fight against any efforts to try that here, Fitzgerald said. Planned Parenthood attorney Lester Pines said the move would drive up costs for taxpayers without doing anything to improve the chances of keeping the state's abortion laws in place. He, and I think they reference Lester Pines, said it was ridiculous for Republicans to seek to intervene in the case without knowing what position Kaul is taking. That's not going to stop them. They just assume the worst. He's a Democrat.
Oh, that's right.
As Pines is quoted here in the paper, Dom, These guys just want to be junior governors, co-governors, mindset of Republican lawmakers. They want to be co-attorneys general. He said lawmakers would have a tough time intervening in the case, despite a lame duck law aimed at making it easier for lawmakers to get involved in legal fights. Another quote, they can pass whatever little statutes they want about intervention, but those statutes don't change federal law. Through a spokeswoman, Call declined to state what the legal position he would take or say whether he would fight lawmakers' attempt to intervene in the case. Planned Parenthood brought its lawsuit in January in an attempt to strike down laws that prevent nurses from performing abortions and limit the ability of women to obtain medications that induce abortions. If the U.S. District Judge William Conley sides with the group, abortion would be available more widely in Wisconsin, particularly in rural areas. The lawsuit contends advanced practice nurses, such as nurse practitioners and nurse midwives, should be able to perform certain types of abortion. The lawsuit asks to make it easier for women to obtain medication that cause abortions, including by allowing them to consult with doctors and nurses via video links. 844-967-2789. We got time for one quick caller, Dom?
Let's do it. Tammy from Sauk County, you are up. Thanks for calling today. Tammy, what do you got for us?
Hello, my favorite defenders of democracy.
Hey!
I am calling with some pretty damn good news.
What's that?
I just drove all the way from Mineral Point to Wisconsin Dells and listened to you clearly on my radio. And I was calling to say thank you very much for the interview you did with Judge Neubauer, and also to remind your listeners that we are having weekends of action at many of our county Democratic parties. And if they'd like to join in, they can come on in. We're writing postcards, we're calling, we're knocking on neighbors' doors to spread the good news that we all need to be voting for Judge Neubauer on April 2nd.
And Tammy, my understanding, second CD, the Democratic second CD convention will be this Saturday, right?
Yes, it will be this Saturday. Registration opens at 9:30. It's from 9:30 to 4 o'clock. It's a great day of democracy. Come on down, even if you're not in the second CD. You know, see what we've got going on in this area.
Well, Tammy, I can tell you, we tuned up the AM signal in your neck of the woods, so I hope you can hear it loud and clear. And I can't wait till we get Talk 92.7 FM up in the Madison-Dane County metro area. I'm excited.
We
There'll
would
be.
love that.
Well, it's coming, sister. It's coming. I've already spent the money. I'm just waiting on someone to deliver an FM antenna to me.
Well, that's what we're waiting for here, too. I just want to let you know the good news. It was a wonderful ride because of you guys.
Oh, well, thank you, Tammy.
Tammy, thanks for the call. And get used to the 1580 signal because, unfortunately, it's not going to go from Mineral Point to Wisconsin Dells. But that 1580 signal, east-west, Tom, that'll go from Wisconsin Dells all the way to Waukesha. Figure out what signal's right for you, be it 1510 a.m., 1580 a.m., 92.7 FM coming soon. And, Dom, perhaps even news out of Milwaukee in deference to the DNC MKE 2020. I may have to suck it up and do something about Milwaukee, man.
Do it.
No promises. I got to take a few deep breaths. Perhaps after the happy hour, I'll make up my mind. We got a fine guest coming. Former U.S. Attorney James Santel. He's a friend of ours. It's always happier in the happy hour when it's Manafort and Mueller time. Devils, James Santel. It's going to be a happy one. Come back with us.
If you missed something on the Devil's Advocates, don't worry. After you get over your shame, you can check out domandcroot.com. Podcasts and interviews updated daily.
You concerned about speaking up at work? Do you feel like you have no say in your day-to-day work routine? Join Teamsters Local 344. Call 414-258-4545. Get a seat at the table. Join your brothers and sisters in negotiating for better wages, hours, and work conditions, and be part of the most powerful union in North America. Teamsters Local 344 covers sales and service throughout southeast Wisconsin and package and airlines statewide. Contact Teamsters Local 344 at 414-258-4545 or at local344.org.
When you shop Goodwill, you don't just bring home a vintage dress or cat lamp. You bring home so much good to your community because everything you buy funds local job training and more. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
5/9, your local single-source IT solutions provider. Specializing in cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting. We manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Enjoy technology. Enjoy59s.com.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com.
Jets grounded, sorry said, then sentenced. I'm Barbara Cusack. President Trump announced the Boeing MAX 8 and 9 jets would be grounded following the second crash involving one of them in Ethiopia over the weekend. Correspondent Tom Foreman reports the FAA's reversal came due to new satellite data.
Essentially, this is some more refined satellite data, as we understand it, which made them believe that this crash in Africa did indeed likely behave somewhat like the crash last fall in Indonesia. An air crash back then. And by that, what we mean is they believe that this is an incident in which the software on the plane was in disagreement with the pilots, and essentially the plane started sort of porpoising very hard to control.
Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort said in a D.C. federal courtroom at his second sentencing in less than a week that he's sorry for what he has done.
Judge Amy Berman Jackson responding, saying, "I'm sorry I got caught," is not an inspiring plea for leniency. She sentenced him to an additional 43 months in prison on top of the 47-month sentence delivered in Northern Virginia for a total of about 7.5 years. Shortly after the D.C. sentencing, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office unsealed new charges against Manafort, state charges that could not be pardoned by the president. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
President Trump is lobbying Republican senators to vote against legislation that would block his declaration of an emergency along the U.S.-Mexico border.
We have a vote tomorrow on national emergency, and we'll see whether or not I have to do the veto, and it will be, I think, all very successful, regardless of how it all works out, but it's going to be very successful.
British lawmakers today rejected leaving the European Union without a deal in any scenario. That paves the way for a vote to delay Brexit to seek a way out of the country's worst political crisis in generations. Stocks closed higher, the Dow up 148 points, the S&P 500 added 19, and the Nasdaq rose by 52 points. I'm Barbara Cusack.
The Devil's Advocates, where there's always time for Scott Walker bashing.
Welcome to our good buddy, Congressman Mark Bocan. Mark, in some small part, this little radio product, the entire rationale for buying a radio station was opposition to Scott Walker. One person's telling me, be humble, Crudy. Take a day and just be humble. And another person's telling me, no, dance on Scott Walker's grave. So, Congressman, I've always admired your sage advice. Sir, what should I do? How should I react to this?
We should waltz, we should polka, and we should two-step. We should be dancing on this right now. To your credit, and I do want to give you guys credit. In Milwaukee, we have seen a shift, especially the suburban areas, from when we had just conservative radio to having you guys there. We have seen a shift in that area, and that's important because I think when people hear ideas, we do better. And I want to thank you for being there and doing what you do.
Hashtag Walker bashing.
Bye, Felicia.
491 Bible.
House and Senate Democrats are introducing legislation to amend the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. The Senate's top Democrat, Chuck Schumer, says a new Pentagon policy demonstrates the need for change.
The Trump administration doesn't get it. Just last night, they approved a new, cruel, discriminatory, hateful ban on transgender service members, people who are risking their lives for us, and they're saying, you're not equal to us.
Facebook says it is aware of outages on its platforms, including Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram. It turned to Twitter to explain the problem. Pete Kaiser has become the latest Alaska native to win the Iditarod sled dog race. Kaiser won the race for the first time early today, crossing the finish line in Nome after beating back a challenge from the defending champion from Norway. I'm Barbara Cusack.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Knowing your breasts can save your life. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Stu Daniels with your headlines. The 5-county Miller Park sales tax could end early next year. A man who was shot in the back by a Brown Deer police officer in 2016 is now suing the village and the former officer. The Kohler Company plans to end engine manufacturing in Wisconsin. The Bucks beat the Pelicans last night 130-113. They're now off until Friday night when they go to Miami to play the Heat in a nationally televised game. And opening day of the 2019 season for the Brewers is 2 weeks from tomorrow. Forecast for Milwaukee and Madison: rainy tonight, windy with lows in the mid-40s. Tomorrow, windy and rainy with thunderstorms possible and highs around 60 degrees. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio.
Warning, you are about to listen to the greatest radio show ever. And due to contractual obligations and to shield our airwaves' corporate licensees from any semblance of liability, responsibility, and gullibility, we must tell you the views represented on this show are not necessarily those of this station or its management. This radio show contains differing points of view on current political topics, and due to the nature of its contents, it should be heard by everyone. Thank you for listening.
3, 2, 1.
Now live from the heart of liberal Wisconsin, where the political party is just beginning, welcome to the Devil's Advocate Show. Best friends proving it's never personal, only politics.
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Now here are your hosts, Dom and Crute.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show. Dom, we are sliding into the 5 o'clock happy hour, and I'm happy to announce James Santel has joined us live via phone, our good friend, a former U.S. attorney, and a wonderful resource when it's Mueller time. And I would say any of these sentencing hearings merits a visit from Jim Santel. Jim, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
It's good to be with you, and lots of things going on and lots of things to talk about today, as always.
Well, perhaps more intriguing to me than whether or not Manafort has to serve concurrent or consecutive sentences, Jim, is the fact that immediately after the sentencing, New York state charges 16 new felony accusations against Paul Manafort. It's almost like this guy can't catch a break, Jim.
This is not at all surprising. We know that Vance's office, this is Manhattan DA's office, has been looking at these kinds of things and probably has a lot of other things on their docket as well. But as you indicated, literally within moments after the conclusion of the hearing this morning in front of federal judge Amy Jackson, the announcement was made that Paul Manafort has also been indicted in that state jurisdiction for some residential mortgage fraud. 16 counts, a variety of different things, banking issues, financial issues. And again, we know about that before. Probably this is, again, in the category of many things yet to come. But it does open up an entirely new avenue here, because even as the chapter on Paul Manafort's federal involvement, both in Virginia and in D.C., begins to come to a close, and he heads off to his federal facility in Maryland, where he is designated to spend his time, now the state action is underway. And as we've talked before, that is very consequential, not only for the charges themselves, but his exposure and this ever-looming pardon issue, which continues to rear its head as it has in the past.
Now, Jim, my understanding was that Manafort had, as part of the many pleas and dealings with the courts, had already pled guilty to some charges. Are these different charges to the state charges that I understood he already pled guilty to?
Right. That's a great question. And this goes into one of those things that probably only lawyers enjoy. It's important for all your listeners to understand it, too. Generally, when it comes to prosecutions, federal, state, one follows the other. And most often, because we do have in this country, certainly in Wisconsin, a rich and wonderful tradition of cooperation. We generally don't step on each other's toes, if you will. We don't typically charge matters in the federal case that have been already adjudicated in the state case based upon the same core operative set of facts. And that's just done for a variety of different reasons, some efficiency issues, and also has to do with whether the sentence, for example, in the state system is adequate to vindicate the federal interest. All kinds of things go back and forth. So you don't see a lot of what's sometimes considered, repetitious charges, things that seem duplicative. Here, you plainly have some tendrils in both sides of it. And the question, of course, is, people have asked already, is this double jeopardy? Is he being charged inappropriately? Is this violative of policy, whether it's state or federal? And the answer is no. What I just described is not prohibitive by this system, which involves, again, both state and federal charges. But you can certainly anticipate that Paul Manafort's attorneys in the state case, in the Manhattan DA case here, are going to raise these issues and say, hey, look at this. This core of facts, at least some of these with respect to some of the counts, we've already addressed these in the context of the federal case, dismiss those, Judge. So don't be surprised if we get motions to dismiss this. So some of this, my own sense is that while, again, that may strike an awful lot of people as somewhat unfair, the answer is, though, they will probably survive, especially since here's a description here of a materially different kind of activity. We're talking about residential mortgage fraud here. Recall that many of the things that Paul Manafort pled guilty to and was convicted of in Virginia and Washington, relationship payments, bank, witness stand along the way.
Oh, well, we're getting a choppy line from our guest, Jim Santel. He is a former U.S. attorney. He joins us on the phone. Let's see if we still got... Jim, can you hear us? Jim going once? Jim going twice? Jim Santel, we are unable to hear. Please, let's maybe take a break right now, because we've got Jim until the bottom of the hour. Let's take a break. We'll try to get former U.S. attorney, friend of the Devil's Advocates, and a great resource for us when it's Mueller time. Jim Santel joining us on the phones again once we come back. You can join us as well, 844-967-2789. Lots to talk about. Manafort, of course, convicted 7.5 years, state of New York, now also laying down 16 indictments. Could do, apparently, according to the reporting in the New York Times, up to 25 years if Manafort convicted on the most serious of those state charges. Of course, Mike Flynn, Gates, Manafort's conversations with Kalimnik, and now apparently Whitaker, according to Jerry Nadler, did not deny that Trump called him regarding the Cohen case. Lots to talk about with our pal, James Santel. Hopefully he'll be right back. We will be right back after this short break. We are the Devil's Advocates radio show. Stay tuned. Tavern is as classic as the street it occupies. Family owned and operated since 1966, Regano's Roman Coin is located in a former Pabst Tide House on historic Brady Street, serving an array of craft beers with a focus on Wisconsin breweries. Also, weekly drinks on Wednesdays, seasonal sporting events, parties hosted for all occasions, and pet friendly. Open Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Saturday and Sunday, closed on Monday. Regano's Roman Coin, Milwaukee's pet friendly, cash only order in classic Corner Tavern.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Wisconsin. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect. For officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Wisconsin Interscholastic Athletic Association and the Wisconsin Athletic Directors Association.
The Devil's Advocates. They refuse to do math on the radio.
Dr. Michael Hicks, professor of economics, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Ball State University. This is troubling math all the way around. According to your mathematics, Michael, when do you think the great state of Wisconsin will get paid back on its investment?
Right. I mean, the answer is the answer is never.
The Devil's Advocates. Sausage making never looks so good.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show, streaming on the YouTubes today. Facebook having a little trouble, but you can always join us on the phones at 844-967-2789. And if you miss any of this fine program, please go online, DominickRoot.com. You can listen to and download podcasts and interviews.
Dominic, the gremlins out today. Let's hope they're solved with James Santel's phone line. Our friend, former U.S. Attorney Jim Santel, talking Mueller time, talking Manafort. I guess it would be sentencing day. I gotta ask you, Jim, the Amy Berman Jackson sentence for Manafort. Any surprises here? She could have thrown the book at him. Apparently, there's going to be a little overlap between the prior sentencing and this one. But Jim, want to get your comment on the actual sentence.
Sure. And the answer is that, again, there may be an awful lot of people out there who are disappointed in this result. But in terms of white-collar cases like this, and remember, this is one, it has to do with paper and representations and back tax issues, those kinds of things. This sentence that does, in fact, run somewhat concurrent, not entirely with what happened in Virginia last week, is not completely out of the realm of the extraordinary. On the other hand, it plainly is, once again, a departure from the sentencing guidelines, and so to that extent, it is notable. What I found most notable from the sentencing hearing, unlike the one last week, however, was the judge's comments to him, including perhaps right off the bat, this no collusion mantra that she described as a non sequitur, is what she said. And of course, right after the hearing itself, we have Kevin Downing, the attorneys for Paul Manafort, out front once again repeating this notion, no collusion. Well, as Judge Jackson said, these cases that she was sentencing on today have nothing to do with collusion. This is not about Russia, even though it does counsel's office. And so many things that and the extent to which your listeners want to go back and digest the sentence is significant, absolutely. Now, a total of 7.5 years or so he will serve. But things like facts matter. She says that with great importance. She says that this indictment, she's not going to be pursuing her decision based upon any vindication of the sentence or any sort of attempt to balance the sentence in Eastern Virginia. Lots of wonderful things. She commented about Paul Manafort's demeanor. He's not especially remorseful, and perhaps most interesting to me is the matter. She makes a point of saying that he has not provided her with his own letter. Judges like to hear from the defense, obviously, a person in the prosecution business or something, but she says, this is a defendant who didn't bother to write.
Oh, damn it, Jim!
Even every other word. I was hanging on every other word that I could hear from Jim Santel. Apparently, he's deep in the bowels of a courthouse somewhere, Dom. Those buildings often constructed of granite, but unfortunately unable to get a clear connection. And I'm so dying to know.
I know.
I've been looking forward to talking to Jim Santel all day, so...
I know we booked this last week knowing that today was going to be a huge day, but the technology sometimes doesn't work for us. Maybe you can go snag a landline from one of the judges, wherever he may be. In the meantime, we will take your calls at 844-967-2789.
Dominic, once again, Mr. Santel pointing out perhaps no big surprises, and I think many in the audience were kind of rooting against Manafort. Would have liked to have seen the book thrown at him, the proverbial book.
Sure.
Would have liked to see him get a nice, long sentence. And, 7 years, 8 years, that's still a long time, man.
That's a long
Even with
time.
Good behavior.
And especially for a man of his age. I mean, what is he, 69 years old, something like that? I mean, it's going to be some tough time. I don't imagine he'll be in the yard doing push-ups and sit-ups for several years, coming out ripped with some gang tats. I mean, he's already, if you believe the filings from his defense attorneys, taking a toll. Just 9 months in the federal prison is already taking a toll. 7.5 years, maybe 10, 15% off for good behavior. It will have an effect. And of course, all that does not account for the up to 25 years he could get on the state of New York charges that the grand jury rolled down 16 indictments regarding that.
Well, if I had to take away from the sentencing today of Manafort, it was probably his attorney. And despite being chastised by the judge, Amy Berman Jackson, it didn't stop him. Downey came out and did what? Effectively said, please pardon my client, President Trump, please pardon my client. And, of course, told him exactly what he wanted to hear. No collusion, no collusion.
Well, he didn't come out and say, please pardon my client. You know, it was
That's
kind of
the implied.
It was that code talk that they always refer to. You know, I mean, it'd be a shame if something happened. Hey, you got friends in high places. Forget about it. A friend of ours, a friend of mine. You know, it all depends on how you interpret the coding. But certainly, for the Manafort's attorney to come out in the second sentencing within a week and once again reiterate this falsehood. I don't know, is it a half-truth? How do you describe the fact that the attorney continues to talk about his client not being found guilty of a charge that was never in the indicting documents to begin with? We have it. Let's hear it. Let's remind the folks. Here is Manafort's attorney and then some awesome protesters. We love you all, protesters. Let's play it.
In the courtroom today, what I'm about to say will not be a surprise. Judge Jackson conceded that there was absolutely no evidence of any Russian collusion in this case. So that makes two courts have ruled no evidence of any collusion with any Russian.
That's not what
Part
she
number
said.
two. Very sad.
That's not what she said.
Very sad
That's not
day
what she said.
for such a callous, harsh sentence that is totally unnecessary. Much like this.
You guys are liars now. You're not lawyers. You're liars.
Unnecessary, much like this. And I don't think he means the Devil's Advocates radio show.
We're very necessary.
Absolutely, we are. I think he's probably shaking a fist at the protesters. You're not a lawyer. You're a liar.
And, of course, that's not what she said. And, in fact, she specifically addressed this issue, notifying that same attorney these were that case, collusion, conspiracy, not under consideration in this trial. I mean, so of course this is code, right? This is code for Manafort.
Please pardon my client.
Please, right. And now with the state of New York coming on, I guess I was expecting that perhaps they would not come forward, the state of New York, with this grand jury. But if they convened a grand jury, they were ready, they were locked and loaded, waiting for this verdict. For them to jump in so soon, not even to wait to see if there would be a pardon, they don't give a damn what the federal government's going to do. They don't give a damn what Donald Trump is going to do. They have to protect their territory. In the state of New York, you don't mess around, and Manafort's going to pay for his dealings within the state.
I tell you what, Dom, it's Roger Stone's day in the barrel tomorrow. He's back before the very same judge, Judge Amy Berman Jackson. And perhaps we'll give James Santel a call tomorrow. And, we can figure out what he was trying to tell us today. And perhaps he can react to tomorrow's news as well. But, Dom, did you note during the course of the day, Donald Trump had to turn the page immediately from the sentencing of Paul Manafort and the newest indictments raining down upon him. And after yesterday talking about airplanes, they've gotten so complicated, Dom.
What? Wait, this is... I mean, come on.
Do you remember yesterday? Donald Trump was saying,
yesterday.
I don't want Einstein flying my plane. Give me a good old-fashioned dumb guy like me.
Right.
Now, Donald Trump.
Hey, the good news is, Crudy, I don't want Einstein in the presidency either. And we don't have that. We've got Trump.
I would gladly accept Einstein, even though he's a foreign citizen. I would take Bob Einstein as president. I would take Einstein Bagel Boy as president over Donald Trump right about now. But anyways, here's the point I'm trying to make, if there is one. Donald Trump declared the emergency grounding of all Boeing 737 MAX jets today. And I wondered immediately, was this a shiny object? Was this another way for Donald Trump to capture the elective, or I guess it's not technically an election, but don't tell Bertie that, but capture the news cycle, turn the page from the bad news. And, you can only say no collusion so many times. Either you've convinced your followers or you haven't at this point, Donald Trump. But the rest of America, well, you better put something scary out there in front of them. TheHill.com reporting Jordan Fabian and Brett Samuels. President Trump announced Wednesday that the U.S. will ground Boeing 737 MAX 8 and MAX 9 aircraft, bowing to heavy pressure after 2 of the planes were involved in deadly crashes overseas. The reversal came after the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, repeatedly brushed aside calls to ground the plane, even though nearly 24 other countries suspended flights by the jets. The FAA said just one day ago it saw no basis to stop the planes from flying. But speaking on Wednesday to reporters at the White House, Trump said that Boeing jets would be grounded effective immediately. We have some sound of that, Fancy Brian. Would you please?
We're going to be issuing an emergency order of prohibition to ground all flights of the 737 MAX 8 and the 737 MAX 9. Any plane currently in the air will go to its destination and thereafter be grounded until further notice. Pilots have been notified. Airlines have been all notified. Airlines are agreeing with this. The safety of the American people and all people is our paramount concern.
Now, maybe the safety of all people, and I'm not saying that this was not the right conclusion ultimately to arrive at, but the timing, conspicuous. The fact that this happened on this very same day, and of course there's damn near every single day, Dom, a former Trump campaign aide being sentenced or indicted. So it's hard to avoid all of them and, being accused of the tail wagging the dog. But this immediacy, ground all flights now. Can you imagine the turmoil that this created across the entire nation? All the grounded flights, all the people mid-travels. What if you were catching a connecting flight in the next city? And that was also a Boeing 737. Well, you're screwed now. I mean, you're flying to San Fran. You're stuck in St. Louis.
But I guess
that's a very different day.
Listen, it's a very concerning issue. I mean, hell, I just got off a plane not so long ago, Crudy. I can't imagine a more terrible fate than a plane going down. But I got a question. Why is Trump doing this? Why isn't the FAA stepping up with their representatives? I mean, this is what they do, right? Why is it a Trump executive order that facilitates this action? That's what concerns me. And I think you're right. I think this is, as you say, shiny objectism to some degree. I think the FAA, if they were given the directive from the president, they could have done it? I mean, can the president now roll out any sort of emergency order for? I mean, if Trump was president when the Ford Pinto was out, would he have done an executive order to get rid of that?
Maybe the Granada. Unsafe at any speed.
Granada.
Or was that the Pinto?
Reagan, wasn't it? Granada? Something like that.
I think you're thinking of the Falkland Islands. I think that was Margaret Thatcher. Come back with us. Phone lines open.
Argentina.
More Devil's Advocates, 844-967-2789.
Lawyers, guns, and money. Oh!
Yeah.
Want to be more presidential? Tweet the Devil's Advocates at Devil Radio.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. That means it could be you, your best man, your worst man. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
To protect his family from disaster, Steve used his camera phone.
Done.
By taking pictures of his important documents, Steve can always have them stored online. Learn more simple disaster prep tips at ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
You are listening to Real Resistance Radio, WRRD 1510 AM Waukesha and WTTN 1580 AM Columbus. Always streaming at realresistanceradio.com. Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison, resisting dirty carpets and harsh chemicals. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We're not using any soaps. We're not using any chemicals. We cost about the same as the other guys. You look at it and you go, where's the downside? You got a completely green clean. That's awesome. We guarantee it. There's no downside.
There's no downside. Use Zero Res. Call Zero Res today. 608-848-9000. Zero Res. Spell it forward or backward. It's the right way to clean.
No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay.
Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The Devil's Advocates.
Doug from Cudahy.
Right around the time of the uprising, I found you. I started listening, and 2 years later, after I signed the recall and voted, we went out to sing along with the singers on my birthday. And they were so cool, and it's one of the greatest memories that I had. And ever since I started listening to the Devil's Advocates, I have been woke. I haven't missed one vote since. You guys have really done wonders for our community, and I'm just so happy you're on the air.
Making radio great again.
For Real Resistance Radio, I'm Stu Daniels with your headlines. 8 newborn puppies were found in a garbage can by police in Marshfield yesterday. Wood County prosecutors are charging 56-year-old Robert M. Wild with misdemeanor mistreatment of animals and abandonment of animals. The puppies, who are doing well, may eventually be put up for adoption by the Marshfield Area Pet Shelter. And the 5-county Miller Park sales tax could end early next year. Members of the board that oversees the Southeast Wisconsin Professional Baseball Park District voted yesterday to proceed with plans to end the tax by March of next year. The tax cost $1 for every $1,000 spent and has been in effect since 1996. You're listening to Real Resistance Radio.
60% of the time, they're right every time. Dom and Krutz are the Devil's Advocates.
I showed up in boots.
Welcome back to the Devil's Advocates radio show. The happy hour, it continues.
Shame on you.
And we've still got a few friends in low places. A pleasant surprise, James Santel has climbed out of the parking ramp and called us back from a better line. Jim, I got a couple of burning questions I got to ask you before the phone line goes dead again, sir. Michael Cohen, recent testimony before Congress, and he said at that time he had never asked for or nor would he accept a pardon from the president. And we see reporting today, originally it was CNN, they had obtained emails from Rudy Giuliani, or at least that described a conversation with Rudy Giuliani from Robert Costello. And my understanding is Giuliani told Michael Cohen after the FBI raid on his house, his office, his hotel room, that he should sleep well at night, Jim, because he had friends in high places. If this is not, hey, keep your mouth shut, rat, and we'll pardon you, what is, sir?
Right. And, the thing that is so concerning about this story, in addition to doing all the follow-up to Michael Cohen's testimony and getting clarity on what was and what's not said about pardons, is the former U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, Rudy Giuliani himself. As we've talked before, this was a man who throughout his career, even as he was mayor of the city of New York, but certainly as a prosecutor, did things in the right way. He understood the importance of delivery of justice, which is fair, and is arm's length with respect to many, many issues out there. And you just don't engage in this sort of subtle or not so subtle messaging to a defendant who is plainly cooperating with the government, suggesting once again, as you indicated, he should sleep well. Don't worry, a pardon may be forthcoming. I look at this once again and I see a Rudy Giuliani that is misbehaving and is not the Rudy Giuliani of the former U.S. Attorney's Office and someone who really understands how this process should work. It's highly disappointing, and it also underscores again the issue of pardons, which again loom large not only with respect to Michael Cohen, but certainly again with respect to Paul Manafort and things said after the hearing today.
Now, Jim, does the joint defense agreement that Michael Cohen and the Trump team used to have together, does that factor in one iota to your opinion, sir? Does that make it better, worse? How does that factor into your opinion, Jim?
Sure. Joint defense agreements, as we have talked before, are common. There is nothing illegal about them. They're frankly good things for a defense counsel and their attorneys to put together, and it makes for a unified defense. And again, nothing wrong with them, perhaps just the opposite in many ways. But in this particular case, plainly, when Michael Cohen decided to cooperate with the government, he broke that tie. And that's an all-important notion. He is no longer a part of the joint defense agreement, not a party to it anymore, and therefore is not only obliged to do nothing with respect to previous obligations, but the members of that that joint defense agreement, the defendants who are still bound by it, frankly, again, should have no contact with him. The relationship is broken. It is severed. And again, as we've talked about in connection with Paul Manafort, the only relationship Michael Cohen should be having is, number one, with his own attorney, his counsel, and second, with the government. And no further associations, affiliations with anybody connected with that joint defense agreement. He is no longer a party to it.
Now, Jim, Elijah Cummings, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, came out today and said that he basically accepts the Cohen's attorney's explanation that his comments to the committee were accurate in the sense that this was post the JDA, not pre-JDA. Do you find that explanation acceptable?
The answer is, again, we don't know, and that's not just a dodge from your question. There is plainly, as we saw with respect to something else we'll probably talk about, Jerry Nadler and Matt Whitaker, there's an awful lot of this kind of thing happening. We get testimony in the public domain. We hear it. We understand it. It's clear. It's reasonably clear anyway. And then there's follow-up that follows on that. Mm-hmm. And plainly attempts by staffers and by congressmen, senators to get further clarity. And we saw that again in a major way today with respect to the Nadler committee. Here, when Elijah Cummings comes forth and says, I don't see any problem with this, he is probably working off of that full universe of understanding out there. He was plainly a major part of the much publicized Cohen testimony, and now has had some other opportunities to hear more about it. I think Elijah Cummings, not only based upon his demeanor during the course of the hearing last week, but on his entire record, this guy's a straight shooter. And I think if he had some problems with what he was hearing, both publicly and privately, he would let us know about it. I tend to put some faith in his description of what he is now perceiving and what he's now sort of digested with respect to the Cohen testimony.
Fine, former U.S. Attorney James Santel live via phone. Jim, I got to ask you, Michael Flynn, he was supposed to be sentenced a couple of times over, and my understanding is his legal defense team has asked for another 90-day continuance on his sentencing. And Jim, I believe we discussed the fact that Michael Flynn, while cooperative with special counsel, and while there was no recommendation of prison time, my understanding, well, apparently the judge saw things differently and basically advised Flynn the last time through, you better do some more cooperating if you don't expect to go to prison for some extended period of time. Jim, want to get your current read of the tea leaves on the Michael Flynn and whether or not the sentencing will go forward, especially in light of the fact there's also this strange Turkish rendition issue out there as a ancillary case on the horizon, sir.
Right. Lots of things to unpack here again with Michael Flynn. Obviously, he has pled guilty. He has been cooperating, we believe. A few things that I do find of interest, and I suspect you and your viewers do as well. First of all, we get this joint status report. Michael Flynn supposed to have been sentenced this week after, as you indicated, the federal judge looked at him back in December and said, you're in some serious trouble here. Those weren't his exact words, but plainly sending the message that he may want to go back, as you just indicated, and do a little bit more with the government to cooperate further. Goes back and presumably is still trying to get some benefits out of that. So the joint status report yesterday says that the defense would like an additional 90 days. He does have some additional cooperative work to do with respect to some of his former allies. That prosecution is still going on. Interestingly, the special counsel's office in that report says, well, you know what, if you want to give him 90 days, that's fine, but we are done with him. And that's not done with him the same way that Bob Mueller was done with Paul Manafort. It's just that we've now exhausted all this. So it's sort of an agnostic approach to this. And I think it's, once again, as you indicated, a reflection of the fact that they're reading the presiding judge here accurately, and that every bit and small piece of cooperation that they can get in front of the judge before sentencing is going to help Michael Flynn and presumably assist him in getting a more lenient sentence. So this is not entirely surprising, but plainly the special counsel kind of has come to the end of his involvement. Flynn wants some more time to see if there's anything else out there that he can do to his credit. And again, his attorneys have plainly advocated for that. We'll see what happens now in 90 days when finally this judge, who plainly views his offense conduct and the reasons for his plea as very, very serious. We'll see what the judge does in the wake of any further cooperation and plainly his misconduct from the past.
My understanding, Jim, Roger Stone's got a day in court tomorrow. Very same judge that sentenced Manafort today, Amy Berman Jackson, I believe her name. What do you expect? Do you expect her to send this guy who's apparently broken gag orders a number of times? Jim, do you expect her to do something similar? When she thought Manafort was tampering with witnesses, she sent him directly to jail. Jim, do you think Roger Stone could leave the courtroom in handcuffs tomorrow?
There is certainly that possibility. Again, Judge Jackson going to be back in the news again tomorrow for exactly that reason. So a couple of reasons for this hearing. Roger Stone, in the wake of his indictment, again, Manafort's former business partner. Number one, she is going to set a trial date, is what she has said before, for his charges of lying to Congress, obstructing the Russia probe. But again, we've got this sideshow, which has to do with Roger Stone's arguably violating the gag order, which she has put in place. It has to do with his authoring some portion of an introduction to a book, and she is going to be hearing all the evidence about that tomorrow. My sense is that this is not quite as serious as obstruction of justice as the Paul Manafort witness tampering situation. My sense is that Judge Jackson, as she showed us today, comments about justice, about facts, about balance, those kinds of things when she's sentencing Manafort. My guess is she is going to read Roger Stone the Riot Act. She is going to obviously examine this within inches of his life to find out what he was doing, what would motivate him again to this kind of behavior. We recall he also posted that very, very inappropriate and arguably threatening posting with respect to the judge herself. She didn't throw him in jail for that. He is getting close. My sense is she may give him one more chance, and then the next misstep, he is in jail. He is in pretrial detention if there's anything else. And so we'll see if I'm right about that, but my sense is that this is going to be an ugly day for Roger Stone. He's not making any friends on the bench.
Now, we've seen some perhaps inaccurate reporting recently that said that Mueller was wrapping up. Special counsel would soon be issuing his report. And I think it might have been the former acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, that first made that representation. But here's my question, Jim. Seems like there are a lot of loose ends. Is it possible that Mueller is wrapping up and he's going to hand off a number of these unresolved issues for prosecution, perhaps to the D.C. Circuit or others, sir?
There are many options here, and he's obviously doing some of that. We've seen a few tea leaves out there that indicate, yes, he is beginning to go in that direction. I have said this before, I think as late as the last time we were on the phone talking about these kinds of things, that I still think we're somewhere in the middle of the middle is the expression I continue to use. Why do I say that? Why do I think that the MSNBC reporting from a month ago that had this report coming out in mid-February definitively, people preparing for it, even that time struck me as completely wrong. Is there's simply too much going on. We just mentioned Roger Stone, plenty of that indictment. We're going to get a trial date presumably tomorrow on that. There's another name we haven't heard from recently. Rick Gates is supposed to be back in court this coming Friday in a status hearing. He pled guilty a year ago and has been cooperating with special counsel, a number of different aspects of that. Delayed Gates sentencing a number of times. If they ask for another delay on Friday, plainly it means he's still cooperating. Ongoing cases out there. He is one of those examples, many out there. All those redacted things in the Mueller documents that have destroyed our toner supplies across America. All those kinds of things that are out there. He has got documents from this foreign entity that he's gotten recently from with an order from the Supreme Court. There's simply too many things out there to suggest that we are imminently going to be getting this comprehensive report. Is it possible there's a small piece of this that he might report on? Yes. Again, the notion that we still have not seen even references to all the, whether it's individual one or company one, all those other references, even the Stone indictment, to people inside the campaign itself, the Trump campaign, encouraging communications with Roger Stone and up and down that tendril back to WikiLeaks and beyond. All those kinds of references have not yet been disclosed. We still have an awful lot of pieces that, to my mind, are not yet resolved. Trials, pleas, cooperations going on. Michael Flynn, as we just said, is still going to cooperate for the next 90 days, going back to scratch his head about a number of things. We've got a number of people out there who may potentially be within the ambit of charges. I think my own sense is that, once again, the report is going to come out at some point in the not-distant future, but I do not think it's imminent. And again, all these things indicate to me there is still an awful lot of activity, even if Bob Mueller himself and his team. Remember, justice is a big department. Lots of people can do lots of things. As we learned today, Southern District of New York and Cy Vance's office, the DA's office, there are many people doing many things out here. We're nowhere near the end of this story.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. That is James Santel. He's a former U.S. attorney and friend of the show. He joins us on the phone. Jim, of course, Gates' business partner, Manafort, in court today. I want to circle back a little bit on this case. Judge Jackson said that she found that Manafort's lies were material to the Mueller investigation, according to interactions with Konstantin Kilimnik. And I want to get your sense on that. Since it's referring to the Mueller investigation, those interactions with Kilimnik, I assume to be regarding conspiracy or collusion, but certainly Kilimnik was working with him in Ukraine. It could be about, some of these financial crimes. Hell, it could be about the witness tampering. Jim, did you get any sense from Judge Jackson what specifically those interactions with Kilimnik referred to?
Right. They're certainly interesting based upon what we know before from previous reporting, certainly from some of these charging documents as well. We know that there has been this communication between Manafort and Kilimnik. Kilimnik's name appears in much of this. And so it is difficult, Dom, to read the tea leaves on that. Plainly, Judge Jackson, because she does have in front of her a pre-sentence report about Paul Manafort that would describe not only what he has done, but all these other things. There are lots of material out there that she has got the benefit of that we do not, that describes some of this. Plainly, his cooperation or lack thereof was a huge part of all of this prosecution of Manafort that she has seen, and obviously the reason for the ripping up of the cooperation agreement. So she has got access to a lot of things that we have not seen. The one thing that I would say is that she once again made it very clear from the start that this case is not about collusion. So as you made reference to the no collusion mantra, is a non sequitur. And what she's saying there is she's really sending a message to, frankly, all of us, including perhaps Paul Manafort's counsel, perhaps even the White House. Let's not go out there and read into today's resolution of Paul Manafort's case in the District of Columbia, last week's in Virginia, as some sort of a conclusion about collusion, or as I've often said, conspiracy. these cases were about Ukraine, about tampering, about obstruction of justice, and she went out of her way to sort of discourage that. Kevin Downing, as I've said before, when I was having challenge problems with technology here, went out right away and did say, once again, no collusion. That's not the message. And so even though Judge Jackson was making these references to Kalimnik today, she wanted to make certain that the world knows that she is sentencing him based upon the counts of conviction and nothing more.
Outstanding. James Santel, third time was the charm. Our friend, former U.S. Attorney, thank you so much for enlightening our audience today, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
It is always a pleasure to be with you, too, and we'll try to get the gremlins out of the technology next time and do it from the start.
Hell, maybe Friday, my friend.
Very good.
Yeah, the good news is there'll probably be another opportunity coming real soon, because Mueller time, it could be just around the corner. Come back with us. Your phone calls. Dial right now, though. One short segment, then it's quitting time. 844-967-2789.
But there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign.
No! Yes. Yeah, a bit.
I don't see the support. I don't support it.
Wisconsin Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald doesn't see the support for legalized medicinal marijuana, even though the 2018 midterm referendum in 11 casinos in the city of Waukesha passed by over 79%. Call Scott Fitzgerald at 608-266-5660. Tell him you support legalized medicinal marijuana.
No, I don't see it.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org, p4ppc.org.
You concerned about speaking up at work? Do you feel like you have no say in your day-to-day work routine? Join Teamsters Local 344. Call 414-258-4545. Get a seat at the table. Join your brothers and sisters in negotiating for better wages, hours, and working conditions, and be part of the most powerful union in North America. Teamsters Local 344 covers sales and service throughout Southeast Wisconsin and package and airlines statewide. Contact Teamsters Local 344 at 414-258-4545 or at local344.org.
Hi, I'm Todd Stryker, President and CEO of Five Nines. Have you got your head in the clouds on how to manage IT for your enterprise? We can make your dreams a reality. With our enterprise cloud technology, consulting, servers, networks, and hosting, we'll manage your IT so you can focus on running your business. Consider Five Nines your personal enterprise IT solution. Enjoy technology. For more information, visit 5nines.com. That's the number 5, NINES.com.
Josh Call, the candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General.
Do you think voter ID had a suppressive effect, not on 100 voters, but on thousands of voters and perhaps tipped the election to Donald Trump?
This is an issue that came up at our trial. And first of all, I should thank you guys because we actually introduced into evidence the recording of you interviewing Dale Schultz, who was talking about the passage of the voter ID law. That was one of our pieces of evidence.
I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling devil's advocates.
I'm the king of rock, there is none higher. Sucker MCs should call me sire. To run my kingdom, you must choose fire. I won't stop rocking till I retire. Now we rock
The Devil's Advocates, the fix for political junkies everywhere.
And we are back. Thank you for listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show, last segment of the day. So if you got something to say, we'll take some calls this segment. We promise. 844-967-2789.
Dom, you're just trying to cleanse your palate of the Garth Brooks. I know what you're doing. Real quickly, Raw Story reporting Matt Whitaker, you remember him, the former acting attorney general, blatantly lied to Congress. Whitaker did, and is now a witness in obstruction of justice investigations into Trump. Quickly, former acting attorney general Matt Whitaker attempted to clean up prior statements he made under oath before Congress during a Wednesday meeting with House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler. Speaking with reporters, and we have this sound, Nadler says there were three main takeaways from the meeting. Fancy Brian, if you would, let's start with takeaway number one. Jerry Nadler, Dem committee chairman.
Mr. Whitaker did not deny that the president called him to discuss the Michael Cohen case and personnel decisions in the Southern District.
Okay, number two from Gerald Nadler.
Pardons done for improper motives could be impeachable offenses, but you'd have to know the improper motive.
Well, actually, specifically states number 2. So do we have another one coming where he states number 2?
The president has made very clear that if someone cooperates with law enforcement, he's a rat, and if he doesn't, he's a stand-up guy. That's the position of a mobster, not a president of the United States.
A mobster.
Let me jump ahead, Dom, because we want to get to some callers. Number 2, while he was acting Attorney General, Mr. Whitaker was directly involved in conversations about whether to fire one or more U.S. attorneys. And number 3, the takeaways Gerald Nadler had from his conversation earlier today. 3, while he was acting Attorney General, Mr. Whitaker was involved in conversations about the scope of the Southern District, New York, U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman and his recusal, and whether or not the Southern District went too far in pursuing the campaign finance investigation in which the president was listed as individual number 1. Those were the 3 takeaways today. 844-967-2789. Let's get to a couple calls, Tom. Who's up?
Joe from Madison, you're up. Thanks, Joe. What do you got today?
Well, I can't thank you enough. What a fat, overflowing pie of information you have supplied. I think, number 1, you should clone James Santel and just keep him in the corner and bring him out, every hour, because it just seems his insight. I think that when he says to read the tea leaves, that's one of the things that I so appreciate about his sense of this, having his perspective, his years in this industry, looking at this and saying, here's what's going on. I think to be able to follow this up with your information about Matt Whitaker, I mean, it just worked out great for you guys that this is the way the end of the hour is. It is just chock full, and I'm chewing on it for a long time. I wanted to have one more thing that you might want to think about with James Santel and this whole world of Roger Stone. And I think I had mentioned to you previously that there had been some conversations that Roger Stone had on Wisconsin Public Radio, and this had been repeated on thehill.com, that he claimed that there were 5 elections in Wisconsin that were tipped, that were changed, that were altered. And I know this isn't within the purview of what they were talking about in the cases that have come up, but boy, I am really curious to hear how that might eventually get addressed. If that's just Roger blowing off his mouth, or where that may finally be addressed. So I throw that into the
Joe, he did specifically say that Scott Walker fixed like 5 prior elections. But, Joe, let me just say, you had me at overflowing pie.
Thank you, Joe.
I love pie.
Always appreciate your calls.
Donuts.
Let's get one more in. It's Wisco Paul. You will have the last word from the audience today, Paul. What do you got for us?
Hey, Paul.
Yeah, afternoon, Devils. Hey, thanks for taking my call as always. I'll give you a quick shout out here. Thanks for having James on. It's just totally awesome listening to him, and also Judge Lisa Neubauer. Just totally awesome show today. And thank you, Devils. Thanks for what you do. It was great listening to those two.
Well, I appreciate the call and the kind words. Apparently, extreme whining worked in this case, Tom. And I did invite Chief Judge Lisa Neubauer. I said, why don't you come back every week between here and Election Day, April 2nd. Don't forget, go vote Lisa Neubauer. Crudy challenges you to do so. I also want to thank our fine guest, Jim Santel. 3 times a lady, Jim Santel. 3 times.
It's a charm.
Is it Verizon's fault or is it Dom's fault? Probably Dom's.
It's the courthouse's fault. Crudy, next Tuesday, looking forward, my Congresswoman Gwen Moore going to come in studio, start us off at 3 o'clock on Tuesday. We will talk with our Congresswoman. Then we're booking out into the future.
I didn't know we could do that. Thank you all for listening. Have a great night. Do it all again for you on the radio tomorrow.
No, I'm going to stay for a while. How about that? Freedom.
Brad Zog, owner of Zero Res Madison. Brad, why should people use Zero Res Madison?
Why wouldn't you clean your carpets like this? We've got a patented system. We also do another step that most people don't do. We have a double rotating brush machine that we use